I will say, as we're getting live here, I really enjoyed your little dance-off at the end of the Griswold episode.
Do like a dance-off.
that side of the table looked growing, just kind of kept growing in concern.
Hi everyone, how are you all this fine afternoon over here in Scotland, or morning stroke evening, depending on where you are in the world. I hope you're all well.
Yep. Everyone, let me know if y'all can hear us okay, if the sound levels are good. If I need to turn my mic down or turn Andy up anymore, just let us know in the little text box. But yes, hello! It's another Sunday, which means it's time to talk about more Warhammer lore stuff. We're joined once again with my co-host here, Andy Law, the one, the only, the Lawmaster.
Indeed. And might I say that today I am super excited because this is one of my favorite topics. I've not only written about it a lot, I've spoken about it more times than I care to mention. So this is sort of bizarrely exciting because it's like, ooh, I get to talk about the thing I like. Good times.
And if everyone on the YouTube chat and the Twitch chat can help me give a round of applause for Lawhammer getting over 1K subs on YouTube.
Well, thank you very much.
We're going to be setting off to 10K now.
We're on the track. Yeah.
But just a reminder, if you haven't checked it out, please do. That's literally what I was doing yesterday. I actually finished the Griswold episode and was like, yes, now I can watch The Fallen Hold. And then I realized it wasn't up yet. And I was like, damn it.
It's uploading right this moment.
Awesome. But so today, for those of you that didn't see me spamming all over the damn place, we are talking about the winds of magic, which isn't necessarily to say I apologize to my editor in retrospect, because it should have occurred to me that he probably thought I meant the book, The Winds of Magic, not the subject, The Winds of Magic. But it's fine. In any event, there is so much to cover. We also have a ton of questions in from Discord folks. I think we have like 20 or 30 questions. So we're gonna kind of hit those as we can, but I'm actually gonna let Andy start and see how much he can try and summarize it without going too far.
Okay, right. Let's keep
what are the winds of magic?
Let's keep it simple to begin. What are the winds of magic? At the polar gates, at the very top and at the bottom of the world, although they often forget the bottom one, the winds of magic billow forth. They come from the realms of chaos, or alternatively, if you wish to view it in a more broader way, the aether. If you've got questions about what that means, do ask. To begin with, the winds are all matched up together and they're a big, horrible melange of awfulness. This is often called dark magic by some, or just pure chaos by others. And as it comes from the aether into the real world, it becomes almost material. It becomes real rather than something that comes from another dimension. And that means that it now begins to conform to real world laws. To begin with, there's so much magic that reality itself collapses around the gates. But past that, it then merges into reality and splits into, if you believe the standard lore, 8 winds of magic. These 8 winds all have a discrete color. Each color, no matter where you are in the world, will be perceived, if you learn to look at that magic, as that color eventually. Some people believe you're just training yourself to see what's already there. Other people believe that it is just innately the truth with the wind. But it's fair to say that if you're on one side of the world and you can see Aqshy, the red wind, if you go to the other side of the world and are trained by an entirely different tradition, you will still see Aqshy, the red wind, as red. You might have a different way of viewing it, a different way of feeling it, but ultimately that wind will still be perceived to you as red. Now, this is where we get a little bit more complex as we split into our 8 winds and how they're seen. So we've got ourselves 8, each one attached to one of the, let's say, colors, which in turn is attached to a particular lore. That's a type of magic. So let's start off with, let's say, where will we start?
Fire. Aqshy.
Fire. Aqshy. Okay, Aqshy. Now, there's lots of ways to say it. Now, Aqshy is how it's most commonly pronounced, but you'll find that often in the books they will say that that is the way that it can be pronounced safely, and that if you actually pronounce it with the correct intonations, it's slightly different. Actually,
to interrupt you, what are those words? Because a lot of people ask that and get want to know the names of the lores. Aqshy, Ghur, Shyish. What?
Yeah.
Where is that from? What is that?
Do we want to go back to where they originally came from, or do we want to go back to in lore where it comes from? There's two very different views. Okay, so let's start off with where the Winds of Magic came from before we go into each one of the winds. The Winds of Magic were originally introduced to the game in White Dwarf number... Ooh, this is a question. White Dwarf number 113. Oh, that's going back a little bit. This was for Warhammer 3rd Edition. Now, a lot of people think that it came in later. It did not. It was Warhammer 3rd Edition with a bunch of new rules that were added by Brian Ansell and Rick Priestley. It was also in White Dwarf number 114, and the Winds of Magic, as we know them today, were almost fully formed by that point. But everything that we understand as the Winds of Magic didn't really get nailed down for another, because this is back in what, 1989. It wasn't until 1992 when the Battle Magic set for Warhammer 4th Edition came out that the Winds of Magic as we know today were not just formalized, they were codified. And it pretty much stays this forever, with people just reiterating different versions of the same basic descriptions again and again and again. And that's where the 8 Winds of Magic are described. That's where they're described for coming from the Chaos Gates and exactly how they are influencing the world. There we lose for the first time one of the early winds that was introduced called the Rainbow Wind. And the Rainbow Wind was replaced by the High Wind. So the High Wind being the merging of all 8 Winds of Magic in a sympathetic way that makes them do powerful shit. Or alternatively, Dark Magic, which is you could argue the original state, or alternatively what happens when the winds are crushed together and do horrible things to create super powerful effects. Consider it almost like the nuclear bomb of magic, in that you start crushing it up, and by crushing it up, it causes explosions of magic that you can use in
splitting atoms. Yeah,
yeah, totally. It's the proper powerful shit that is extremely dangerous. And only very talented wizards, very capable wizards, or very stupid wizards use it, because it also comes hand in hand with corruption. Okay, so past that, the winds go through a variety of different forms in a variety of different games, but they are basically the same in all of them. You see them pop up in Blood Bowl, for example, in the Dungeon Bowl game, where they still had a Rainbow College and a Dark College at that point, but that later changes and they get rid of the Rainbow and Dark, and they leave that for people like the Dark Elves and the High Elves, and humans only have the 8 colleges of magic. So that's that. We then pull back into the actual in-lore side of things. So where do the winds come from here? Now, you have different versions of the lore that tell you different stories, but there is a general overall consensus, and that's that the winds didn't really break into the world with any great power until the gates themselves collapsed at the North and the South Pole. That's the gates of the old ones. And when they collapsed, they flooded the world with etheric energies that should have stayed in another dimension. Alternatively, with another reading, you could claim that those energies were always there, and at the collapse of the gates, it perverted it, it changed it, and it caused everything to become something new. Regardless, we have ourselves magic flooding the world, and that allows demons to also flood the world and do all manner of horrible things at what's effectively the beginning of time in the Warhammer world. So that's where they originally come from. There's a couple of things that we need to add on top of that as well. First one is, you ready for a buzzword? Anaquan. Anaquan is effectively a mythical language, but it's actually ancient arcane elven if you want one word. It's the original language of the Slan if you want another word. It's alternatively the language of the old ones if you want another description. But Anaquan is the foundation point of all language in pretty much the Warhammer world. All of it comes from there because certain words in the Warhammer world have real effect. If you say something like Aqshy, or alternatively, possibly the true pronunciation, Aqshy, if you say that and you have magical capability, fire will literally form in your hands. If you go Taraqshi, making a slight distinction, Taraqshi, that enunciation might turn that fire into a quick streak of fire that flies across a battlefield as you make a quick fire dart.
So it's kind of that really famous concept in fantasy IPs of like a true language.
Correct. But that is, if you want to know what it is in truth, because it has been stated multiple times in the lore, it's also language demonic. It's what the demons speak. And that's because it's the true language of the Aether. Where form in the Aether is imagination, it is the depth of emotion, and it is conceptual. It's not real, it's concept. And word in the real world is the equivalent of concept in the other side. So the concept of fire is Aqshy. And you say the concept of fire with magic around you, and it causes material fire to manifest around it. So we have ourselves 8 wins. Oh, question.
And yes, just getting little things that I kind of see popping up in the chat. Jinx, essentially, yes. Though the South Gate is the southern realm of chaos. The Chaos Waits are more of the desolation. They're like the bridge between reality and that unreality. But yes, that is what the southern Chaos Waits are. It's mostly unexplored. We get little bits of it here and there, but
Yes to all of that.
Let's go ahead and jump, because we actually get to the question stuff. We got to get through all the establishing bases. So yes,
well, we get our wins in
with fire. Let's start with the wind of fire.
Actually, is 2 things to consider for all the wins before we go through them all. Number 1 is that they have an empirical thing. That's something that you can see. And they also have, let's say, an emotional side. That's something that you can feel. And that's important to know, because each of the winds do 2 things. They're attracted to things that are empirically there. That's things that you can see and feel in the imperial world, in the real world, the mortal realms. But they're also attracted to how people feel, how people are reacting. So actually, it's attracted to fire. It comes directly to empirical heat. It gathers around empirical heat, but it also gathers around tempestuous emotions, anger. Someone who's angry will gather actually to them. And indeed, if a lot of actually sinks into someone, it will start making them agitated, jittery, angry, and they're ready to go. And that means that the spells that use actually tend to be fireballs, or spells to make someone go into frenzy, or get somebody really angry, somebody really passionate about something. And one thing you have to also realize with the Warhammer world in comparison to the real world, the magic is in everyone. It's in everything. It pulses through everybody's bodies. Now, some people have got blockages in their bodies. Some people have got ways of channeling it. That's individuals. Cut a long story short, if you're angry in the Warhammer world, there is actually within you, if you've got yourself a, let's call it a bright wizard, someone who can use actually sitting beside you, a fire mage of some type, they could literally draw that out of you. They could use that magic to help fuel their spells. The angrier you are, the more magic they potentially have to then cast. But the Warhammer world being the Warhammer world, there's loads of magic generally billowing around all around.
Would it be safe to say then that in Aqshy's case, there's almost kind of this vicious cycle that can happen? Where if you have like a mob or an orgy or something where there's a lot of passion, a lot of people are getting fired up, actually starts being drawn to it, is pulling down to it, which then makes those people even more passionate, which can get bad.
Absolutely. And to make it even worse, the same is the case for fire. So say, for example, you got the equivalent of what's happening in our world right now, where fires are sparking off where things are too hot, and they start to burst up into flame. In the Warhammer world, that will go on for longer, and possibly much longer, because the flame itself can be fueled by the Aqshy that's there. And that can keep a flame burning for potentially far longer than it should. There's a couple of fine examples in previous parts where wizards have created big burning flames, and those flames have lasted for years because of the amount of Aqshy that they flooded into it. So yes, empirical, emotional, all piles together, that's actually.
Yeah, not sure if it's still canon, but I imagine the burning of Altdorf when the Bright Colleges accidentally set the slums on fire was probably a good example of that.
It still gets mentioned every once in a while, actually, as do the Wizard Wars. The issues with it, depending upon which edition you read, is that the colleges themselves have recited. It makes it more difficult for the Bright College to be the Bright College as it's classically described and has been since 1992, because it's actually almost in its own district, which is completely burnt out all around it.
Yeah, for anyone that wants to see that, you can literally go download Return of Reckoning right now, go play it. You can go to Altdorf and you can see it, and it's awesome. Like, it's literally just a there's just a bunch of burnt buildings around the Bright College. Nobody wants to live there.
Not a good place to live. Well, we dive into Azyr so that we can get through these more quickly.
Yes, heavens!
Okay, Azyr, the lore of the heavens. Now, Azyr is a magic that many of you will know if you know your Age of Sigmar side, because it gets popped up a lot over there. And it's not so different, although it's got some different tones over in the Warhammer world. Azyr, the celestial magic, is not just a magic of lightning bolts, as many people know it. It's also lightning of telling the future, of knowing what is to come. It's a magic of hope. It's a magic of aspiration, of clear skies, of being able to see the skies. Because one of the ways that you can tell the future in the Warhammer world is because of the way Azyr drifts flying across the sky. At night, when you look up through Azyr, it distorts all the stars. And that's how they tell futures using very complicated mathematics. They can determine where the stars should be and where they've been moved by Azyr and be able to determine people's futures because of this. When great portents are coming, they can determine that from the stars. And you'll find that most strong practitioners of Azyr are known for also being, for example, scryers of the sky. They call the Blue College, because it's the blue magic. The Blue College in Altdorf, that's the Celestial College, is known for its great soaring towers topped with domes and great telescopes that peer up towards the stars. Many of their magisters are old because they don't take the front lines as much as everyone else because they're too busy peering into the sky in the hope of seeing some great future event of great import. Their magic... yeah, totally. Their magic can be, however, pretty destructive because they also have lightning attached to that, the bolt from the blue, so to speak. They are blue wizards, after all. Anything else we'd add to that?
What like emotions or physical things would you say Azyr is drawn to?
So that's mostly imagination, dreams, hope, anticipation for things that could come. So those who are particularly hopeful, those who are dreaming of a better tomorrow, are the ones that are going to be dragging all the blue clouds. Think of your head being lost in the clouds. That's loosely Azyr. Losing yourself in those billowing clouds around you. Much like we said with Aqshy, once you start, you tend to go further. So those who are known to daydream, for example, become much more of a daydreamer because it drags all of the Azyr to them.
Yeah.
There's also a slightly sharp spikiness to it as well. That's the lightning bolt side, shall we say, where it's known not so much for its temper. That would be much more Aqshy's domain, but it's known for its crackling danger. So it's always be worth having that in mind when you think of your
so you would expect to find Azyr around like workshop places where people are inventive or aspiring, working on things, probably a lot of creative types, but maybe also like astrological events. Like I imagine meteor showers would have a lot of Azyr.
Anything to do, anything to do with the sky. Storms also brings Ulgu. We get to that in a second. It loves a scudding cloud that bring you in the shadows and the darkness that comes in with a lot of those clouds. But yes to all of that. Absolutely.
All right. Hey, let's jump to Ulgu then.
Ulgu, shadow. Okay, Ulgu, the lore of shadows. So here we're looking at untrustworthiness. We're looking at empirical shadows and darkness. We're looking at people being political and filled with intrigue and being wrapped around as the shadows in their mind start to make them potentially quite paranoid. Ulgu also comes hand in hand with
anxiety.
Yeah, quite. Ulgu is indeed the lore of anxiety. It's also a variety of things like fogs. As fogs gather in, that brings in Ulgu. As storms come gathering in, that brings in great clouds of Ulgu into the sky as well. Ulgu also comes with a strong sense of wanderlust, the need to move from one place to the next, much like the wind itself. You find that most practitioners of Ulgu tend to be travelers. They're often seen as very wise as well because they've traveled from place to place to place and they've seen all things like the great wind that comes along with them. It's also associated to a degree with storms, but not with lightning per se. That's more Azyr's ground, but great storms welling up and great fog banks billowing around them. That's 100% Ulgu. If you're going to drop it down on any individual thing, I'd maybe go confusion, distrust, illusions, paranoia. That's all of it. Their spells mostly deal with illusion, trickery, mind manipulation. And this is the big one, casting shadows into the mind. Arguably, Ulgu is the worst magic as far as the colleges of magic are concerned because it can literally change everybody's mind. there's something to be said about blasting someone with a fireball, but you can always see the effects of that. The melted person over there and their smoking boots. But when you go up to somebody and go, hey, you know what? I think that I'm going to use my shadow magic now, and you don't support the Emperor anymore. That's, effectively,
removing memories, adding memories.
It's dangerous stuff. So in the Empire in particular, they're very, very careful about the apprentices that they teach shadow magic, because they've got to be people who can be trusted effectively with the Empire itself, because they can just go around changing people's minds, removing events. And indeed, there's a lot of rumor amongst all the other colleges who don't really like the Grey College too much, that the Grey College basically is just an extension of the spy masters of the Emperor. And whenever something occurs that the Emperor doesn't like, he just covers it all up with grey magic. Whether that's true or not, meh.
Yeah, so we have a cheeky comment from Jinx for you about Gerhardt. But
would Gerhardt be considered Azyr then by definition, law, since he's very hopeful? Yeah, but although Gerhardt by his nature his head is up in the clouds. He's actually got a little trait where he's a bit of a genius who gets himself lost in the clouds. So yeah, Azyr is very close to him, although light magic is very close to him as well.
So with Ulgu, one thing that I think is important to kind of hear you touch on a little bit is that Ulgu, at least from the Empire's perspective, because of the way the Grey College has formatted itself, it's very heavily associated with justice.
Yes. Oh, that's a really good point to add as well. It's almost beyond justice, because they're very closely related to Verena in general. One thing that's worth quickly discussing, since we've taken this small aside, is the Wheel of Magic. The Wheel of Magic is each one of the colors in a wheel in a circle, in a great circle that goes round, with each wind sitting beside another, and each wind having a rune on it that points outwards, normally if you're depicting it correctly. The grey one, if you've got it there, that'd be great. The grey one is the Sword of Justice itself. Now, the Sword of Justice is also closely related to Verena, the goddess of wisdom. That's the one, and you can just see it's the grey one to the right-hand side there. You see that arrow that's pointing up? That's the Sword of Justice. And that Sword of Justice is also represented by Hoth, the god of the elves, the sword masters of Hoth with their great swords that they dispense justice with. Justice and being fair and being a good judge is hand in hand with Ulgu, because you have to have the correct character or it corrupts you to your core, because it is arguably the wind of politics, the wind of power.
Yep. All right. Excellent. Let's go ahead and jump to metal. Chamon.
Chamon. Okay, Chamon. I'm Scottish. I will often pronounce it Chamon. And indeed, when I'm using the actual spells, the CH to me is, I can't help it. It's often pronounced as an X in phonetic languages. This is the wind of metal, the lore of metal. This is the yellow wind, the gold wind. This is the wind that deals with logic. It deals with process. It deals with step-by-step, understandable, objective fact. The gold wind is all about so many other little things as well. It's also lashed up with greed. Many people believe that the dwarves love getting the gold because it's lashed full with Chamon. Because that particular wind is attracted to heavy metals, all heavy metals, arguably excluding lead. At different points in the lore, they'll say that lead repulses all magic. And at other points in the lore, they'll say that the reason it repels all magic is because it's so heavily infused with Chamon. Depends upon which source you read. Yeah. Either works. Really,
it's the same outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Is it like more like the color black situation, or is it more like led to like radioactive energy situation?
Yeah, so this is the wind of wealth, the wind of rationality. It's also the wind, as I mentioned, not just of greed, but also a touch of obsessiveness. Because there comes with detail that obsessive nature to go through all of the steps in the correct order. And you tend to find that the negative connotations with the winds are when they come in too great a quantity. So too much red wind beside you, you get angry. too much gold wind beside you, you start to get obsessive and obsessed by the nitty-gritty of the details. Gold wizards are known for being alchemists, for being able to change one substance into another, for being able to deal with molten metals of a variety of different kinds. They're quite hot, much like Aqshy, but unlike Aqshy, where they're burning across the battlefield, throwing fire all over the place, the gold wizard tends to be far more calculated in what they do. They tend to be far more careful. They tend to be at the back line rather than the front line, throwing fire in everybody's face. They tend to have quite long spells. Some of the most famous spells, the searing long arc spells, used to be in the old game, all the way back to, say, let's say 4th edition Warhammer, with the longest range spells in the game at 72 inches. To, again, support that idea that gold wizards were far more careful with everything that they did. So I think that's a pretty good start. It's also the, I don't know, the College of Experimentation. They're the engineers of the colleges. They tend to make most of the magical artifacts that everybody is aware of. That
they tend to have a lot of. One of the things I really enjoyed in the Von Horstmann book is it talked about a lot of the metal wizards. A lot of them tended to be rather buff individuals because they were smiths, or not all of them, but like there were some of them were more alchemists, some of them were more engineers or tinkerers, some of them were more forge masters and smiths. They're creatives in a sense.
Oh, there's one other stereotype that's worth noting. Quite a lot of them are fat. Quite a number of the miniatures that used to be there were quite large and round, because it's also the wind. It's to give you that idea of presence, heaviness, metal, but also the greed that lies with them. You'll often find them covered, bedecked in rings and big gold chains. They're also the only wizards, arguably, depending on which version of the lore you draw from, that can actually wear armor, because they can go tip to toe in their metal armor and it doesn't stop them channeling their magic. However, the rules, for all they might have said that in the lore, never really allowed that to occur. So you'll find in the various editions of Warhammer, they'd say one thing, oh, metal, it's brilliant for them, but you can't wear armor.
Yeah, they couldn't be bothered.
Reasons. That makes sense why none of the others could wear armor, because it would fill you with Chamon. You'd be literally top to toe in gold magic. And if you're a bright wizard trying to channel some fire, you'd be like, oh, the gold's getting in the way.
I believe it's the case in at least 2nd and 4th edition of the role play that you can wear armor as a metal wizard. But not in the battle games.
Totally, but not the battle games. To catch this one here, can you use lead handcuffs to incapacitate? No, that wouldn't be enough. All that would do is impede the magic around that very small
gag them.
If you want to do it, get yourself obsidian. Obsidian is known for its deep anti-magical capabilities. The Destroyer Sword, for example, that Malekith is often mentioned, long core of obsidian sitting in the heart of that. There's various obsidian artifacts through all editions of the game, and they are all, without fail, anti-magical to their core. You want to stop a wizard? Grab yourself some obsidian.
Yeah, and a lot of the factions that are able to get their hands on obsidian have made some of the most devastating weapons, like Destroyer of Eternities for the Tomb Kings, part obsidian. The Blade of Realities for the Lizardmen, part obsidian. It is a nasty thing.
And if you're looking to mix things up, if you're the role-playing group out there, doing something like making obsidian arrows or obsidian weapons and using them to break down wizards is always a fun thing to do.
So let's go life. Ghyran.
Ghyran, right. Ghyran's a lovely one. Now, Ghyran, out of all the magics, is the easiest to use. It flows freely through water, through life, through everything that's got any part of life in it at all. It is the magic of horniness, because it's the magic of life. If you're looking at where it's going to gather, orgies, just people having sex, people just living their lives. Halflings gather great quantities of Ghyran because they love their lives. They're very much a passionate people in that regard. So not passion on the bright one, which tends to be a passion, I'm really behind this. It's far more just passion for life in general. Jade magic is all about friendship, fecundity, plant life, water flowing all over the place, and the Jade Wizards themselves like to connect with it. In the Empire, that often means that they themselves have got bare feet. That allows them connect through to the great channels and flows of Ghyran. It doesn't like winter very much, but it really likes spring and summer. Autumn is when the wind begins to drop down a little. But cut a long story short, it's the green wind. You'll see it in soil. You'll see it in water. You'll see it in life everywhere. It's a magic that if you wish to attach it to any of the gods, you'll be seeing with goddesses like Raya or Isha. the fertility gods in particular, but people in general are filled with the stuff. Everybody in the Warhammer world is filled with it, and if you were to take people,
otherwise you're not alive.
Quite, and if you remove it, you will become sterile. They will have no ability to have children, so those who can channel it away also have those rather nasty side effects. You remove life magic from something, it begins to rot, and the removal of life magic is in some respects the beginning as we move towards necromancy and other horrors, because you need to remove that. Indeed, in some versions of the game, casting life spells at undead that would heal would in fact do the reverse and kill them.
Yeah. Oh man, there's some stuff we're gonna dive into with that. So I'm seeing a lot of great questions in chat. I just want to let y'all know I'm not ignoring you, but I know we're gonna get around to those subjects, so just hang in there.
There is a few wins to go through.
Yeah. Death. Let's go death. Shyish.
Shyish. I love Shyish. Shyish is a great win. So Shyish is a win that everyone immediately goes with death, but it's much, much more than that. It's the wind of time itself. It is the wind of movement of one thing into another. The good old the wind of death, the purple wind, is dusty, it's cobwebby, it gathers around death, it gathers around sepulchres, it gathers around people who are mourning, it gathers around loss, it gathers around all of those black and grey emotions that we're all aware of. Depression, for example, comes hand in hand with it. Because it comes hand in hand with death in general, you tend to find that the undead are redolent with it. Shyish literally everywhere. It's one of the reasons why in the Warhammer world, whenever you see someone draw some skeletons, they're never just skeletons, they're covered in dust and cobwebs, because the wind itself gathers to that sort of thing. It's also the wind of, I suppose loosely you can almost say the wind of sand, because the sands of time are a classic representation of Ulgu. You'll find that many of the miniatures that are associated with Ulgu, amethyst wizards, for example, tend to carry hourglasses. It not only represents the time, it also represents the wind itself with the sands of time. The sands of time, as they billow one way or the other, are very much the wind of death. I will say, though, that there is a difference between the celestial side, Azyr, and the other side, where we're here with Shyish. Shyish is all about the past. The wind billowing into the past and current time. Azyr is all about looking forwards. So Azyr is forwards and Shyish is back.
Yeah, Shyish is that lore of memories, which there's if totally. You ever, like roleplay wise, you could do so much cool stuff with Shyish, because they can literally see the memories in things. They can see the memories in places and all sorts of other crazy stuff like that.
Few other things worth adding. It's the wind of silence, the wind of reverence, the wind of respect. If you're looking on the more elemental, the more mystical side of things rather than the elemental side. Oh, that's pink though. It's not quite purple. So close.
It's close enough.
It's close enough. Yeah. It's also the wind about boundaries, moving from one part of your life into another. So it gathers around all manner of different stuff, but it is known most famously for its ability to repulse the undead, to drive back the undead, and hopefully not be used to control the undead. Because that's
and I would say a strong enough amethyst wizard could cast a time stop spell. You would have to be a very powerful wizard, but it could be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And in some respects, you'll find, for those of you who don't know, the Winds of Magic creeped into 40k multiple times. In that various games that were based in the 40k universe took parts of the Winds of Magic and almost just uplifted them and dropped. And many of the time distortment spells that are there came hand in hand with purple iconography because of Shyish, the Wind of Death, particularly in games like, say, Space Hulk.
Let's jump to a wind that you talked a little sass about not too long ago. Ghur, beast.
Ghur. Yeah. Now, Ghur, in some parts of the lore, it's got an actual temperature as well. Ghur is known for being cold, but Ghur is the lore of the wind, the amber lore, the wind of beasts, the lore of beasts. It's in all wild things. It is moving out of control completely. It's more than just a frenzy. It is something that has no real intellect sitting behind it. It's something that is bestial.
The savage lore.
Yeah, indeed, the lore of savagery. Now, if you're looking for any species that particularly epitomizes what many view as Ghur, often they bring up greenskins. I would rubbish that heavily, because greenskins are really clever. they aren't as clever as, say, for example, your average human, but they have goblins. Definitely are.
Goblins.
They're not savages. They are worse. They're a force of nature. They're almost like the tide. And yes, they have savagery to them, but so do many humans. The greenskins are not necessarily natural users. Well, they can't really use any of the winds per se. We'll get to that, I imagine, later.
But we'll get to there.
But Ghur, particularly in the Warhammer world, wherever it eventually goes to, is very much wild creatures, pelts, skins, atavism, as in becoming a base creature, something that doesn't really think anymore. Impulse, just doing, not thinking. It's the I'm getting Ghur. Ghur. It's also a wind of isolation and remoteness, of distancing yourself from any civilization at all. Wild places, out of the way. It's very much the lore of the wilderness as well. So you'll find it gathering in great amounts out in the middle of nowhere, and equally that attracts more wild animals and great wild beasts. In areas that are particularly wild, it's noted that a lot of people who live out in those places are more likely to become wild because of that. Because the Warhammer world isn't the normal world. Don't think of it as the normal world. If you go places where there's big concentrations of magic, it's going to change you, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and there's some interestingness to Ghur as far as like the subtleties of magic, in that I think one of the things that's explained in the lore that's really interesting is like domesticated animals tend to be less infused with it because they're not wild.
Yep.
They're not
correct
part of, but like it kind of paralleling Dhar world a little bit. If you were to take a domesticated pig and put it out in the wild, so that Ghur starts getting drawn to it, it becomes a feral hog, and it would probably get really nasty because Ghur would make it even scarier than it is in our world. And hogs are terrifying in our world.
They really are. Utterly terrifying. Anything else that's worth adding? Isolation, we've covered that.
Okay, so a question Fagoth brought up that I think is good to ask. When you say become wild, you do not mean mutation, like becoming a beast man.
Not particularly. That's when the winds go dark and the winds go sour. That's more the area of dark magic, pure chaos itself, rather than the individual winds. The individual winds are, for all they are potentially capable of changing you, they're subtle with their changes. They're not heavy-handed. If you use the wind all the time, those changes become more apparent, and it reaches the point where if you're a species that is particularly prone to change, like humanity, their wizards become more like the wind and arguably become mutants because of that. Because some of them, their hair color changes, their eye colors changes. Some of them will literally grow claws. Some of them will burst into fire when there's no wind around. That ain't normal. That's just not what normal people do. And they're marked in, for example, the role-playing rules as arcane marks, which is a nice way of saying acceptable mutations.
Yeah, mutations that you might not get executed for.
Quite. So just think of it as the wind of ferocity, the wind of dominance and brutality.
Practitioners of Ghur usually have great beards. Well, I would actually say that trappings of civilization, like shaving, is something you'd want to avoid as a beast wizard a lot of the time.
Absolutely. If you're going to be a beast wizard, get that beard out if you're a man. Let your hair grow all wild otherwise. But yeah, absolutely. It's not the wind of civilization. That much is certain.
So let's jump to...
one other thing that's worth spotting about that one. Leathers. You can wear leathers and it won't impact stuff, which means you can get, as a wizard, minor armor if you fancy.
Very true. All right, let's jump to debatably one of the most complicated lores, Hysh, the lore of light.
Hysh. I love this wind. Arguably my favorite. I say arguably. Hysh. As its name suggests, it's also associated with serpents, but we'll get to that potentially another point. Hysh, the lore of light, is the most diffuse. It's the most light of all the winds, and it's almost impossible to not only perceive, but to also use. It's an extraordinarily difficult wind to use. It is, however, also the wind of extraordinary destruction. Of all the winds, by far the most destructive. It is what brought the Dwarven Empire to its knees, as Hysh flooded through the world's edge mountains and caused earthquakes to shatter their way through the old world, pretty much bringing their civilization to its knees, allowing the greenskins to come flying in. Hysh is bluntly the magic of pure, unadulterated power. It can literally shake everything apart. It is the magic of frequencies, the magic of philosophy, the magic of understanding. You need to be, generally speaking, someone who is exceedingly intelligent, exceedingly insightful, and supported to even use the stuff. Humans often have entire choirs singing at correct frequencies just to gather enough of it so that they can actually channel it into anything that's useful. It's a magic of beauty. It's a magic of contemplation, enlightenment. It's also, to a degree, a magic of health. And the big one that many people know it for, abjuration, the ability to tell demons to go fuck themselves. It is the magic of pulling apart anything that shouldn't exist. Demons, undead, spirits of various kinds. It is also, perhaps contradictory to that, a magic of purity and thus pacifism, a magic of truth. The light wizards in particular are known for their ability to discern truth in others. They're also known for their very cold, very emotionless states as the light magic begins to consume them. Light wizards are also known for living for far longer than most of the other colleges, but not all. The one that lives the least long, generally speaking, is the Brights. Most Brights burn up early. They really burn up early.
So a couple questions came up with this that I think are worth addressing real quick. So one is that, yes, a lot of you in chat kind of are pointing out, or either realizing and pointing out that this is why Egron von Horseman is such a big deal and why he is as terrifying as he is. Because he is a light wizard who was bad before he joined the Light College, which is nuts.
yeah, totally. Egron has a special place in my heart and in my game that I'm currently running just now. So I don't want to necessarily go into anything because he's core to certain things. But he was the patriarch of that order, arguably the supreme patriarch of the entire colleges. If you believe that particular side story, he's been repositioned in time by multiple authors. So he's a difficult character to pin down with certainty. But what you can see is he was the most powerful light wizard in the Empire at the time. Light magic is known for its holiness and its purity. The fact that he was the one that flipped shows something extraordinary happened. It's not something that could be done without deep contemplation, because the light wizards are also seen to be probably the most intelligent. They're not like the Gold College that are process driven. They're almost mechanical in how they approach things. Light wizards, by comparison, have a greater depth of faith. Their college in Altdorf, for example, is it's a massive orphanage, really, where they just get people from across the city and teach them how to sing so that they can all gather the Hysh magic there for the wizards to use and ensure the Great Pyramid, which is again designed to channel down Hysh magic, which is so diffuse. It's so difficult to see. It also gathers around holiness in all places. So if you're looking for what sort of characters would have Hysh magic around them, very devoted priests. Temples gather Hysh to a degree, and they also bring a certain amount of immunity to the demons because of that, because Hysh magic is antithetical to that which shouldn't exist in the real world. To a degree.
Yeah, and so we have a bunch of questions coming up. I promise you guys we're going to circle back around to them, because a lot of what Andy just said plays into like stuff with geomancy stuff, but we will come back.
There's so much.
Let's get through the battle lores.
Right.
So we still have done
Amber,
beast, metal,
amethyst, bright,
we're
celestial,
missing
gold,
one.
Grey, jade, light. I think we've done them all.
Oh no, we did them all. Yeah, I think
we did them all. So 2 wins left to go.
Yeah,
so let's just make sure we do those. The first is Dhar, which is unfortunately sometimes called black magic, and it's not something that I ever allowed any of my writers to do, because it just comes out bad, particularly when you say dark magic is bad, light magic, fair stuff is good. Oh no. So first, let's start off with Dhar. Dhar is arguably the core state of what the winds of magic would be before they refract around reality. This is arguable because there are many who say that this isn't the case and that Dhar is a perversion of the winds of magic. You can decide yourself as to what's the truth. Different writers have taken both stances, often in the same book. So don't think that you will be going in a different direction if you choose one over the other. Loosely speaking, it is the merging of all the winds. It's when the winds themselves become stagnant and stop and don't get to move. They'll collapse in each other and form into Dhar. It tends to be black and sticky. It is the wind of destruction, of dissolution, of rot. It is the wind of your soul corrupting and going wrong. It is the wind of mutation, the wind to a degree of change, but not change in any positive fashion. We're not talking about, oh, our government's bad, we should really get somebody else in. We're talking about just melting the fucking government and melting all the buildings and all the people and cackling while you do it. Dark magic is also, without compare, the most powerful. Now, that is deeply contentious for people who love high magic, because they just don't like hearing that. But there's a reason, that the Dark Elves dive down hard in it. And there's a reason that it's avoided by others. The reason is because it corrupts. It just does. It corrupts the real world around you, and it also corrupts you as a practitioner. Wood Elves, for example, who have many a dark spellcaster, have a variety of things put in place to try and make sure that they don't corrupt, including having light wizards with them to go, oi, stop! So you're going bad again. You shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said for dark magic in that, like, there's a reason that a lot of the faction lores or like the specialized lores that are very destructive and powerful draw from Dhar as like the basis, or were invented using Dhar as the basis. Because if your goal is just to cause mass destruction or unleash spells of unparalleled power, you're probably going to be relying on Dhar.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's
I'll
also
say one other thing.
Relatively easy to unleash if you're stupid.
By far, yeah. It's really that's the big problem. It's powerful and easy, but the power part is essential for spells like necromancy, because you have to break natural law to make necromancy work, which means you need an enormous quantity of power. The same goes for demonology, the ability to summon demons into the material realm. It requires an enormous quantity of power to do that. But again, in both cases, you often require other winds too. Shyish, for example, the wind of death, is needed for necromancy. To a small degree, you could argue Ghyran as well. In the same way, light magic is often needed for demonology. That's the magic of abjuration, but also the most powerful magic for tearing holes into reality itself and shimmering things into existence. It's not just good, it's also bad. So that's demonology. There's one last thing worth saying about Dhar. It is also what happens if you're not trained in magic. If you don't really know what you're doing, you just fart around trying to figure out how to use this magic stuff you can see because you happen to be some sort of naturally sensitive magical type.
Witches,
witches for your classic witch. You just pull on the winds. You don't really know one from the other. You just yank on it. You mix them up and you try spells out, and that forms Dhar by its very passage, which in turn corrupts you as a user. Meaning that most witches in the Warhammer world may start off with the best intentions, but they become cackling lunatics whether they want to or not. And things go very, very bad. It's why the colleges of magic in the Empire, for example, go, oh, you can do a bit of magic, yank them out, slap them into the college and say, only use one wind, don't mix it up, because that creates Dhar and is bad.
Yes, which we will cycle back around to that in a moment.
Because there are some very strong contradictions to that.
Yeah, so
very strong.
A couple questions. So is Dhar the easiest to draw upon without training? I would say yes. Like it's what you, if someone learned they had magic, didn't know what they were doing, and just started pulling on threads, it's very unlikely they're going to do anything but Dhar. Not intentionally. It's just
because it mixes. Yeah, it's just you're just mixing stuff. It's a little bit like, imagine if you're an artist and you get given one color to draw with, and you just draw in red, you're fine. You're just going to draw everything red. Everything's great. Now imagine you're given 10 crayons and you must use all of them at once, but you're not allowed to mix the colors up and draw a face. Plop them down, give it a go. Yeah. Just try it. You can't do it. And that's what happens with witches. They just drag whatever comes and they create Dhar the second they cast. They don't intend to. They intend to do whatever it is they're trying. And often, because their senses are so poorly honed, there's 3 senses in particular that view magic. Their senses are purely badly honed. They can't even see that they've created Dhar. They think they're possibly doing good. They might be healing people. They might be delivering babies. They might be doing all manner of good, but they leave pools of Dhar. And that, over the course of time, corrupts everything.
Yep. And so a couple of questions that popped up. So, like, what is this what wizards from the old world setting would be using? Theoretically, yes. Though
yes.
We don't but we don't,
but they won't.
we're not exactly sure where they're going to go with it. Hedge wizards, I think, fit in a little interestingly in that they do use Dhar, but they also tend to use
They do not.
Oh, they do not.
They do not. So I'm going to define two types of hedge wizard.
That's what my gut said,
yeah.
and I was
so
like,
there's
yeah.
Two types of hedge wizard. Hedge wizard number one is the derogatory phrase that is used by wizards that have been trained or by Sigmarites when they're talking about any old wizard they find out there. And that will include witches, warlocks, weirds, crazy things all over the place. And they call them hedge wizards, but they're not. There's also the actual definition of hedge wizard, which is an old magical tradition of humans where there's wizards that live on the boundary between the liminal space, if you will, between civilization and the wild. And they are able to cross that boundary and also cross into the spirit realm as well. And these are rather ancient practices that have gone back over 3,000 years. And they are almost entirely safe. They're far closer to religious practices than they are to magical practices, but they are 100% safe. They do not create Dhar. They do not really understand the winds of magic in the way that others use them, and they have a certain set of rules and strictures in place that ensure that they never create Dhar. It's a long, convoluted process, not for this stream, but cut a long story short, there are human practices that can safely channel magic.
Yes. And we're going to come back to that in a moment when we tackle a different lore. But so Mfe question here with this, and I would say yes, absolutely. Like you're going to use Ghur if you're resurrecting a beast. So like when at least in little bits and pieces.
Yeah, if you've got yourself some big, huge, massive creature that needs to be woken up, Ghur's the one to get it going.
Yeah, so like if you're the Vampire Coast campaign, yes, they do want Ghur for the whole thing of chasing Aminar, killing him, and then resurrecting him. That would be something you would want. So let's get the last kind of main lore out of the way with
chaos.
Chaos.
Chaos. It's just chaos.
That's such a cheeky.
Yeah, it's chaos. Chaos. Now, chaos originally was called the Rainbow Wind. In that, what it did was it took all of the winds and safely channeled them together. Now, Chaos was the new name that was brought up. This was much later. I think it was Marion van Stauffer that first did that for them. I'm going to guess he did it for an Inferno article, actually. The same Inferno article that said there was more than 8 winds of magic as well. So that's a fascinating aside for perhaps later. There's a pink wind, for example, and an orange wind. It's named. But that's really obscure lore that most people don't really subscribe to, but worth knowing that they do exist. So Chaos is the most powerful, safe way of using the winds of magic. Dark magic is just the most powerful. It's the atom bomb of magic, where this is the far safer version that isn't going to corrupt your soul. It's the good stuff. It's the stuff that the High Elves use. It's the stuff that the Lizardmen use. It's the stuff that I think it's Fen Shi over with the Cathians, right at the very top with them as well. They use it as well. It's a very rare magic in that it requires an extraordinary amount of knowledge to properly use, because you have to have mastered all 8 winds of magic to do it properly. Now, that didn't always reflect in the battle game. In some versions of the battle game, anyone with high magic could take from any of the elemental winds of magic. But in other versions of the battle game, it's just, no, you're a high magic user, you just take high spells. But in terms of the overall lore, if you can do high magic, you can do all 8 winds, because you have to master all 8 to be able to channel all 8 to then turn them into high magic, into chaos, to actually form it up into what it is. And if you're wanting to go back to old Eghrim, it's the fact that he believed that he could find a way to do that as a human, and the colleges wouldn't allow him. That arguably was what made him fall. And then you just can't stop. You must stop. Yeah, there we go. So loosely, that's your high. I don't think there's anything that's worth adding.
I think the only thing that probably for discussion of high, maybe a couple examples of what is high capable of that helps it stand out.
It's literally so high. I remember when I was discussing when we were pulling together some high spells at one point. And the problem with high is that it doesn't actually have its own unique thread, because it takes from all 8 winds and then adds +1. So I've got myself light magic. I can cause an earthquake. Well, I've got high magic. I'll move that fucking mountain. Raw!
Yeah.
And that tends to be the tone for high magic in general. Oh, I can move up and do stuff. I'll do an apotheosis, fly over, resurrect people, bring them back to life, and be so high up in the sky that no one can stop me.
Yeah.
It tends to be the magical +1. And I know that that's a terrible way of describing it. And you can pick out individual spells, particularly if you only look at one of the shorter lords with only 6 spells in. But when you look at the broader lords, you tend to find that high magic can do almost everything. Just look at all the crazy shit that the high elves can do to begin. And then look at all the crazy shit that, say, Mazdamundi can do. And that is all sourced at its heart inside high magic.
Yeah. So we do have a bit of a silly question, though I'm genuinely curious what your answer to this would be. So is Saruman of many colors, is he wielding Dhar or is he wielding High?
He would almost certainly be wielding Dhar.
Yeah, that's what
so the many colors would be the merging of those colors and creating blackness, rather than the merging of colors in sympathy with each other, understanding the nature of light and the way its frequencies work to bring them all together and creating high. You could argue that that light magic is almost one step away from high. It's really close. Really close. But to properly understand high, you need to understand all the other winds as well.
Yeah. So there are, I think, a number of things I've seen kind of pop up in the chat, and a number of things you said that I'd like to take down more, to pin you on more specifically. So kind of basing off, and I think that high magic discussion helps lead into it. You talked a little bit earlier about the legendary earthquake that Lord Kex unleashed that screwed up a lot of the planet because he was like, the slum were like, these continents don't quite look right. Shift. Slan, but
fucking Slan.
Yeah, you talked about and I think you did actually a really good job of explaining high magic, of explaining how that is a major Hysh event, though it likely has high magic was the source of how it was unleashed.
Yes.
Of that, and I think this actually gets into a really important discussion to have that a lot of people ask about. Of do you want to talk about the geomantic web for a second?
Geomantic web is a fun thing because it's been written in slightly different ways and then wiped out and rewritten again. A lot of people think it's a relatively newish thing, and it's kind of not. It's been kicking around for quite a while. So let's go with actually a slightly different start so that we can drill down to what came before. Most of us are aware of the vortex of magic, but I'm going to quickly explain it to make sure we've got exactly what it is.
Good.
When magic burst into the Warhammer world from the poles during the Great Catastrophe and everything went wrong, they had to stop the magic from bringing the demons and doing all the awful stuff, and the High Elves created a great vortex of magic. And that vortex spiraled down into the center of Ulthuan and sucked all the winds of magic out of the world.
Yeah, so just for everyone's kind of mental imagery, if the world is like this, so you've got the 2 polar gates, this is where most magic is entering the world. It literally is all getting sucked around in a big vortex that leads to Ulthuan. So like
exactly.
The world would look weird from if you could see magic from space, it'd be a really big, cool looking spiral heading towards Ulthuan.
But then the elves changed it because they realized that couldn't contain it. So they built themselves, and this is why I'm bringing this up as an example, a geomantic web. But they didn't do it because they had an original idea. They did it because one existed already. So let's get that into mind first. But what did they do? They went across the entirety of the Warhammer world, and I do mean everywhere. Every last corner of the world that they could get their little noses into, they went to it, and they planted giant waystones. And these waystones gathered magic like mini vortices and then sent them off to the next set of waystones, off to the next set, causing great confluences of magic across the known world. These, in time, will become what eventually breaks the world because of the vortex collapsing and the way that these have been corrupted over the course of thousands of years. But that's by the by. So they create effectively a giant matrix of magic over the world, so it isn't a giant swirling mess, because that giant swirling mess would cause uncounted terrors and damage. And instead, it siphons it down and channels it off in different directions. And it creates magical confluence points across the world, one of which is Altdorf. It sits on the center of one of the magical confluences at the center of a web. And that's one of the reasons they cited the colleges of magic in Altdorf, because there's so much of all the winds cycling into there, and indeed more there than anywhere else in the Empire, and arguably the old world if you want to go completely Empire-centric. So that then channels it all the way over to Ulthuan, where it gets sucked down into the vortex and put back into the aether again, into the realms of chaos if you prefer, or into the divine realms, depending on your individual beliefs. So that's that. But they didn't, as I say, create that originally. What they did was they were aware of and copied the existing geomantic web. And this is where things get a little bit more, you know what now? Because the actual answers for this are not just few and far between. The writers who've written them are kind of contradictory.
I feel like my answer to what's about to come out of Andy's mouth would be different than what Andy's going to say.
Totally. And not only are they kind of contradictory, they also have purposely gone a little bit, I don't know what it is, so I've got to write something. I'll just write vague. And they write super
I don't
vague.
want to answer this.
But there's a what now, and I have to write about this crap. I can do that in a paragraph. And there's a vague thing that works on vagueness. So we've got ourselves a web that was created by the old ones, that channeled the magic of the world itself. And it was a more subtle, more, let's say, arguably more powerful version of what eventually becomes the Winds of Magic later. Now, depending upon your interpretation of what that means, depends on what it was. For some, they will suggest that the old ones were creatures that lived both within and without the aether. They were both material and immaterial. They bridged the two and didn't really understand what was happening in the aether at all, because they were so lost in what they were. And the magic that they were drawing was as much etherical as it was material. The fact that it was seeped into the world is nothing more than saying the material world is a reflection of the aether. And by that I mean, if we go to, say, the Liber Necris, there's a lovely little section about what is the soul. And in there, it makes it quite clear that if I, as Andy, was here, one part of my soul would be the immaterial soul, that which powers my being. Another part would be my mind, the thinking part. But one part that's worth mentioning is my body. This is material. And most people, when they think of souls, they think of the stuff that lies over in the aether, where the Liber Necris made it very clear that really isn't the case. Your material stuff is a part of your soul, and breaking the material from the immaterial doesn't necessarily mean you've lost your soul. It just means you've lost bits of yourself. Vampires are entirely material. They are here. They only have the material components of their soul. They're broken away from the aether. And the reason I bring that up is because the general arguable belief is that the Warhammer world itself is the soul of the greater aether, and the geomantic web is one way of channeling that. But that is just one of 1,000 different interpretations. Ultimately, we have ourselves a big thing, what the old ones made, that's full of a sort of magic, okay, right? And it's kind of subtle, but it's sort of not. It's really powerful, but it kind of might not be. And it's arguably the only thing that's saving the world, and it can do nothing. It's a lovely thing.
Yeah. So this question has come up a few times. I think it's worth addressing. So geomancy is something that Lizardman players talk about a lot because it's talked about a lot with the Slann. They do a lot of it. It's the old ones are really big on it with the whole breaking the continents apart and all that stuff. But it's not, lore of geomancy would functionally probably just be high magic. But it would.
I'll give you a different interpretation if you want.
Go ahead.
Because we have one now. Earth has been a massive sticking point, because when they created the Winds of Magic, they forgot about it. And it's sort of laying a little bit inside the green winds, sort of, maybe, because, you know, that's where life can spring up from your trees and all the rest, and it's flooding through the earth. And arguably, it could sort of sit in metal, sort of. But Earth has now been very, very firmly placed in the most unlikely of places. And I really quite like it because it's all involving earthing, and that's Azyr. If you go take a check at what they've done with the Cathaean parts.
Yeah, the elemental wind of stone.
The elemental wind of stone, exactly. So that has opened up, I think, a new way of interpreting Azyr, a new way of looking at it. Is not just the bolt from the blue, but the impact and the earth and the earthing process and the earth itself. And that allows you to start looking at the flashing dragon black lines, for example, ley lines filled with lightning bolts of energy. It allows you to move into a more geomantic web using Azyr. And I kind of love it.
Yeah, that actually, what you said actually just brought up something I wanted to address, because it's a really interesting aspect of the lore, is that how Earth is used to ground magic. So, like, there's a lot of stuff about miscasting and ways to prevent miscasting or dispelling, is that in the lore, when it kind of gets into the nitty-gritty, it talks about dispelling is them harmlessly grounding the magic into the earth. So, like, someone throws a spell at you, you take the magic and you shove it down into the ground where it's seemingly absorbed or dissipated or something. I was curious if you could expand your thoughts on that, as far, because that, like, that's talked about a lot, especially like in the old 6th and 7th edition magic items. There's a couple arcane items that talk about that.
There is. It's a fun old one. It's a little. It's been rewritten and rewritten so many times. It's a little bit like, just to use the example I had there, in the old Ogre Kingdoms book, I had an artifact which pretty much said yin and yang was light magic and dark magic. And as we now know, that's not the case, because they've changed it into something else. Yin is 4 of the winds and yang is 4 of the others. So yin and yang come out in a slightly different way. And the same has occurred with magic in terms of its dispels. At some points, it was exactly as you described. It was all about grounding it, stopping it, dissipating it, often draining it. And effectively, because the lore hadn't been as established as it was before, it wasn't so much grounding it into the earth, it was grounding it into you, siphoning it down like you were a mini vortex over an Ulthuan, and passing it out into the aether, dispersing it, because you were a wizard and you had contact with that. But then the winds of magic became much more external, and that didn't make a lot of sense. So a lot of descriptions of it turned into, I'm throwing my spell into your spell, turning it into a wizard duel instead. So a dispel might be a simple spell that you throw into the center of an ongoing spell. So let's say a bright wizard's trying to throw a fireball. You, as a grey wizard, throw loads of shadows in the middle of it. It's simple. It's not a proper spell, but you're disrupting the Aqshy that's building there, and you effectively dispel it and dissipate its energy by flooding it with a different wind of magic. There's only so much. There's only so much space. So it was described as that in a few places as well. And I think that the answer, if we want to be relatively broad, is all of the above.
Yeah, because what I was going to say is, I think I like the idea more of the grounding is more of like artifacts, or like the dwarves do that a lot. Like Anvils of Doom will just snatch spells and be like, nope, fuck you, down to the ground.
And then yank it into it and pull it down. Fucking right. Yeah, absolutely. So I do think it's a bit of both, but I would caution for anyone that's considering writing their bits or working with the characters, if you're pulling magic into you, you're almost certainly causing yourself extraordinary harm.
Yeah. It's like, I'm gonna stop this lightning bolt from hurting my friends by sending it through my body.
Yeah.
Like, sure, you can, but you better be really good.
Yeah, damn straight.
So I think so kind of jumping off of dispels, a fun thing. Let's talk about rune magic. Let's talk about dwarves.
Runes.
Rune magic is, I love rune magic because of the precision. Like, I think rune magic has a lot of comparativeness to high magic in a sense, but it's very different. But like the dwarf understanding of magic is fascinating.
Yeah, so dwarves, I'm going to go in a slightly different direction first, just so that we can understand what I'm about to say a bit more clearly. That's that in the Warhammer world, broadly speaking, there's not 5 senses, there's 8. Now, there are much more, because we all have a sense of balance. But we're talking about the 5 classic senses plus 3 classic etheric senses. And it's worth explaining those just so you understand what I'm about to say.
Go ahead.
The first one is your intuition. This is the 6th sense. This is your ability to feel stuff around you. And that is the winds of magic, literally. It's not, oh, it's a weird feeling what I have. You are feeling disturbances in the wind. If people are feeling aggressive and particularly angry, if you've got a highly attuned 6th sense, you'll sort of feel the anger over there, and sometimes your hackles will raise and you'll feel like something's not right. And each of the winds gives a different response to your empirical senses. Everybody responds to their intuition, their empathy in a different way. No species respond in the same way, but loosely speaking, it's your sense that something else is out there. The next one is your witch sight, or the sight, or anything else you wish to call it. This is the 7th sense. This is your ability to actually see Not just the winds of magic, but spirits and ghosts and all manner of other crazy shit. It doesn't let you see into the aether, so don't think it's that. It's a very much a here in the mortal realm sense, not an over there in the divine realms or the chaos realms or whatever. But it allows you to see one or more of the winds. Some people can only see one. This is particularly the case for, say, the Wizards of the Empire. They're notorious for only being able to see their own wind well and being loosely aware of the other ones. Some can see all 8 winds. They can see Dhar. Almost everybody can see Dhar. It makes you feel so fucking creepy.
Almost regular people can almost see
yeah.
Dhar.
Walking over a grave, that gives you that sense of Ulgu. That's your 6th sense. Walking into a graveyard and seeing shifting sands drifting down between the various Ravenstones, that's your 7th sense. 7th sense is not just sight, and it's often interpreted as just sight by people who don't really think about it. It's all of your senses. You can smell it, yeah, exactly. But you can't really touch it because that's the 8th sense. The 8th sense is your ability to actually handle this shit and turn it into something else, and not just with your fingers. It's your almost like your extra fingers. This is often called your channeling, your ability to control, manipulate and change the winds of magic into form. To cast any spell in the Warhammer world, you need to channel it into a particular shape, into a particular form, which when the correct word is attached to it, will turn it into an empirical outcome. Will turn it into a fireball rather than just a thin strand of Aqshy that you've managed to channel in front of you. You say the right word on that thin strand, it sparks into a fireball, and you send it off using your 8th sense. So it's worth just saying 6th sense, 7th sense, 8th sense. So that's your intuition, your ability to feel. That's your 7th sense, your ability to perceive. And your 8th sense, your ability to control. So dwarves. Dwarves cannot see, cannot really perceive, don't really have a 6th sense. And then if you've got a character out there with 6th sense that's a dwarf, you should justify it in a very different way than the classic 6th sense, because they just don't have it. They don't perceive the winds of magic at all. But they know they're there. They do, however, have an understanding of it all, but they don't really have an 8th sense either. They can't actually channel, manipulate the winds of magic. So they do it using tools. And arguably, they do it using a heavy amount of the gold magic. Because gold magic is almost intrinsically attracted to them anyway. They're redolent in the stuff. And it's also the magic of process. It's the magic of the way they think. It's the magic of logical step-by-step organization. And it's also the magic of what they are constantly working with. Runes are the same as spoken word to a degree. And by shaping the runes in the right way, it attracts the winds of magic. But it's not just doing that. It's folding the metal in the right way. It's ensuring that you trap the winds into a particular matrix. And they have learnt, or indeed were given at the beginning of time and have forgotten, depending upon how you want to look at it. The classic example with the dwarf is you do not have an original thought. Our ancestors did it better.
Yeah.
They are the ones we should be copying. If you have an original thought, that's chaos.
Yeah, which
that's bringing something new to the table.
Yes, which is why for a lot of conservatism is so important for the dwarves. And,
absolutely.
That's why the Engineers Guild, it takes a long time to convince anyone that something's a good idea.
And that's almost,
why do we need change?
Exactly, and it's almost only ever going to be a good idea if somebody goes out there and finds out that one of the ancestors did it first, and they're like, okay, fair enough, that's fine. So they fold it all up, they get the magic trapped within a thing, then the rune itself will create particular effects, and they have mastered this in a way that no others have, because they were so either A, devoid of magic and needed to, or B, were the ones that were given it because they were the ones that were also magically resistant. They could channel and control so much more magic in an area because they themselves could withstand it without change. Where anyone else who attempts to do that sort of runic magic would probably turn into a mutant with the enormous amount of winds that they're binding into a very small, compact area with those runes. Creating a runic weapon is extraordinarily dangerous if you're not a dwarf, and you have to be very careful with the way you're doing it. Elves, for example, are not known for it. They've got loads of runic weapons, but they're not known for their ability to create and fashion on a regular basis new runes, and there's a reason for that. It's exceedingly dangerous.
Hmm.
Where the dwarves get off with it because they're magically resistant. And they can deal with enormous quantities of stuff, but they're blind to how difficult it should be because they don't perceive all those energies. It's like magnetism. We don't see the magnetic waves all over the place, but we can feel it the second we put two magnets together.
Yeah, and I think it's important of demonstrating. Also, lovely comment for you, by the way. But one of the things that is so impressive about Dwarf Rune Magic is that it's exceedingly dangerous. Like if you ever get to read a story that actually shows off runesmithing, the dwarves acknowledge that it is a absurdly dangerous process, and that's why they're so meticulous about it, because a single wrong strike can be catastrophic. And it's also why they're very hesitant to use Anvils of Doom, because the Anvils of Doom work with live runes, which is very powerful but very fucking dangerous. But runesmithing is such a fascinating process of, if you had second sight, being able to literally see like tendrils or winds or even like a vortices of magic, because the way the dwarf build the forge, the dwarf literally build these forges that draw the winds in a particular way, like you'd build a furnace to draw in heat, and then this dwarf's taking this hammer and like literally grabbing bits and pieces of magic and smashing it
into place. Yeah, absolutely.
Which is incredible. It's incredible.
It's marvelous. I've always loved it. I've always loved the nature of the way that they build their artifacts, because I think it's great. If you're looking for some form of analogy, imagine every time they're throwing that hammer that they've basically got like a 1 in 1,000 chance of an accidental nuclear explosion, because there's that much magic. Because as we've already said, combining the winds of magic is exceedingly dangerous. It creates Dhar, but they don't. They layer them on top of each other. They use the correct magics in the correct quantities. And as we've mentioned before, probably because they were given the ability to do that by the old ones. The old ones were the ones that almost certainly handed over all the basic concepts of what it was to build runes. And did they make new ones? Yeah, well, yes. Alaric the Mad notoriously did.
That's
but he's mad. But so Mad also notoriously did something else, and that was to combine the impossible, to take two master runes and put them on the same weapon, which is impossible. A master rune is so powerful it can't go beside any other master rune, because the amount of magic in it causes it to literally go boing like a magnet. It bounces off. Impossible to put more beside it. But he managed to combine two of them.
Yeah, so and like Andy said, because there were some people asking, it's very strongly implied, almost outright stated, that the old ones taught the dwarven ancestor gods, the first generation, how to use these things. There's a place known as the Glittering Realm, which is supposedly where the dwarves originally came out of. It's located somewhere near Kallax-Zorn, more than likely, but it's supposed to be like an otherworldly realm where they learned the secrets of runecraft. I think it was Smednir who first brought it out, and then like Grugni in many ways perfected it. Anywho, so let's go into, so we do have a super chat comment that I do want to address. Thank you for the tip. So he says, once again, the winds of magic belong to Nagash. All right, there's a statement. But that being said, how does the Black Pyramid affect the wind? So kind of like how we talked about earlier, with how there are different materials and different like colors and themes that mess with the winds. Nagash basically looked and was like, I'm going to take all this wisdom I've learned from Nehekara and the spirits of the desert and the gods, and also the dark elves that he tortured. And he basically created a Dhar locus, like a huge magnet that draws in all the winds and crushes them down eternally. So it draws in, crush, draws in, crush, draws in, crush. And it's a giant power source. Like it's for us, the concept of, taking a whole bunch of matter and compressing it very quickly causes an enormous amount of energy. It's the same thing. But the Black Pyramid stores it. That's a lot of why Nagash was so goddamn terrifying, because he mastered that process. Because he's insane, but in a fun way.
Nagash is awesome. He's one of my favorite cards. I love him.
Yeah, we've definitely had some requests to do a episode on him, and we'll definitely.
Nagash is great. So he's proper great.
So subject a lot of people want to know about, and we're gonna go ahead and dive into it. Is Andy? So there are 8 wins. You told me about 10 wins. All right. Well, then where the fuck do all these other lores come from? How do I get the lore of Tzeentch? or the lore?
We have quite a lot of other types of magic in the Warhammer world. So let's go through the core ones. First is one we've covered, but let's just make sure that we definitely state it, and that's dark magic. Dark magic comes in two forms. Those who are using actual dark magic, they're using Dhar purposefully for an end. Your necromancers, your demons, your chaos worshippers. They use pure, unadulterated chaos magic, dark magic for their spells. But there's a bit of a bridge between our Tzeentch, Slaaneshi, Nurgle magics, which are all magics that are often described as gifts from the gods, but they follow the classic wizard model in that they channel in the magic, they speak words that form that magic, and they fire it out, and they can be dispelled. They are similarly blessed as, say, for example, the Skaven, who get theirs from, say, the Horned Rat. They are similarly blessed to, say, Hysh, who get theirs from their lovely old fiery demon god of horribleness. They're receiving their magic almost as a blessing. But there are other gods who are giving, presumably, pure blessings, as in, I've got myself a priest of Sigmar, he comes out and he pulls a fireball from the sky. Now, the question is that magic? The answer is, in the Warhammer world, the answer is bluntly yes.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. You can argue it's not until the cows come home, but you are arguing what is ultimately a futile position. Hysh is so diffuse, it's impossible for most to see, and it's impossible for most to dispel, and it's also the magic of holiness. It is the magic that most of the good guy spellcasters are sort of pulling on. Now, does that mean that the god is not involved? No. But if you believe the stories that say that the gods withdrew and do not want to come back, because every time that they do something in the material realm, it shakes the material realm's very foundations. The only time they'll ever return is at the end of the world, effectively. So it shakes the foundations of the world because it's a material realm. It cannot cope with immaterial stuff being impinged upon it. If you believe that and accept that is true, then the god has nothing to do with what they're doing. What they're doing is their very nature, their pure belief draws Hysh. And then they cast their spell, which is their prayer, their miracle. And it can't be dispelled because no fucker can see the spell in the first place because Hysh is so diffuse. And Hysh is also surprisingly powerful. And it can only gather around those that have pure faith, and they are exceedingly rare and almost all human. Almost all of them. Every other species that's going on, say, for example, the Great Maw, they're eating away, doing their crazy magic that they believe comes from the Great Maw, but they are following the same magic process. It can still be dispelled in the same way. The vast majority of Skaven and all the other species, they're basically doing magic that they claim comes from their gods, but ultimately it's just classic magic. The same for the Chaos gods. They are saying it bluntly. All magic comes from Chaos. We know this. And we're channeling it out and using pure Dhar. We don't care if we mutate. It's a blessing from our gods. Let's go, baby. Dhar's good stuff. Woo! They're fine with it. But we have yet another type of magic to add in on top of all of this. Just to make things even more confusing, as we move towards our great green mass out there. Wah magic. What is that? It is none of the above, yet arguably all of the above. Wah magic is ill-defined inside the setting because no one really has the balls to define it. But what it definitely is self-generated. This is orcs gathering, or goblins gathering in great numbers and casting spells that they claim come from their gods. They're shamans that are channeling the powers of their gods. They're priests in many respects, doing the priesty thing. But their source of magic is the orcs that are with them, is the greenskins that are with them. And it only comes from that big gathering of Wah energy. It's a very 40k concept that got translated over. This was not always the case for the orcs. They didn't used to be like this. They 100% are now. Now, if you try to apply the Winds of Magic model to this, in many respects, they do the opposite. When they come in, they drive the Winds of Magic out from themselves. You could argue that they're pulling in Ghur. You could argue that they're pulling in magics, and that's what they're doing, and they're pulling it up. But no book has definitely defined that that's the case. Some have said that it is. Some have said it's the exact opposite. They're like magnets and throw magic out. The best definition is Someone will define it later. Age of Sigmar did it in a slightly different way. But we're not talking about them. We're talking about what we have here in the Warhammer world. And in the Warhammer world, they generate their own magic, and their shamans can then channel the energy that was generated like it was a wind of magic and then fire it out. So greenskins make their own magic.
Yeah. So one thing that I find really interesting, so kind of talking about the greenskins a little bit, my readings and understandings is I definitely like the idea a lot that Ghur has a lot of interest in the greenskins. Granted, they keep a lot of beasts with them. They keep boars, wyverns, spiders, wolves. Like Ghur is a lot of their culture. And I think Savage Orcs have some interesting stuff going on because they're compared to the rest of them. But they also actually have war paint that can protect them, whereas the others don't.
I would argue, though, that if Ghur was their primary source, they'd be the most powerful shamans.
I think they are the most powerful shamans, though. Well,
they're not.
They're
not. Well, they're equal.
I like my words, Zach. What I will say, though, is I think what's really interesting to kind of think about and consider from the greenskins is they're not from this world. They're from somewhere else. And it seems implied that the old ones either made them and brought them by accident, or found them and brought them by accident.
8th edition stated it clearly in the core rulebook where they arrived by mistake on the old ones' vessels.
Yeah, spores.
Yes, the spores. So if you believe 8th edition, then they are 40k orcs under a different guise. Makes no sense at all for the various types of greenskins across the Warhammer world. So what you could then say was that they were manipulated by the old ones to make sense of them all, and then suddenly it sort of makes sense. But effectively, they're psychic, not magic.
Yeah, but what I find
very interesting
is the greenskins. They definitely to me come off as almost like the old ones made them somewhere else and realized not a great idea. That planet probably got wad, so let's go start over somewhere else. And accidentally brought them with. One old one didn't do his customs procedures properly. Didn't get the ship sprayed down. But what's so interesting about them is not only do we have two different forms of magic, and debatably more than that, where like the battle game simplified it into Little Wa and Big Wa, but it arguably it's even more complex in that we have orky magic with Big Wa, which seems fairly consistent among the different times of greenskins, but goblins get weird. Where
they've got some pretty weird manifestations.
Yeah, and it's like, and then we got the spider god, who's not Gork or Mork at all. It's a completely separate entity that also gives them magic.
Yeah, quite. So it's worth saying that the gods in the Warhammer world are real. Don't think they're not. And that certain gods, if they are real, probably do make some impact on the world. So that means that we can answer the Gork and Mork thing with a Gork and Mork's foot literally popping down and doing the thing if you wish it to be that. That it's so ill-defined that all of those answers could be correct. If you want to keep it as simple as possible, orcs just generate their own magic, and instead of creating Dhar, they somehow process all the winds of magic around them and create Gorky Morky magic, which can then be channeled by the shamans. That is let's say, the Occam's razor result, which is you're going for the most obvious answer. And that will mean that whatever Ghur is around, whatever green magic with Ghyran is around, just all gets funneled together and gets gathered about. The problem with it is that you've got to make sure that if you're describing it to others, that it's not magic that other wizards can use. It's been turned into something new. Energy is not magic.
Yeah, you need to explain how the greenskins are either corrupting, perverting, or providing their own form of magic. And why, why when they gather up and they get excited, it becomes a tempest. Like they're a very weird species. Like they're full on bizarre.
And it's not just that it creates a tempest. Yeah, they do. And it's not just that it creates a tempest that can be used by their shamans. It also changes their psychology. They start to gather together, if anything, even more and pulling together around strong figures. It makes the strong figures even stronger, even those that aren't necessarily priests, shamans, whatever a particular line you want to go with, are manifesting in a different way. Some orcs are bulking up like crazy as they're getting whacked. Where does all this extra material come from? And in the Warhammer world, the answer is mostly magic.
Yeah. A lot of people ask like, oh, why don't the orcs get big like the beast in 40k and stuff? It's like, no, they would. Like if the Warhammer world, if they had enough time and they got a wall big enough going, it's just that they really can't go as far because there's only one planet for them to fight over.
True fact, and it's also worth saying that some of the orcs in the Warhammer world are still pretty fucking huge.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of people don't like Total War. If I could teleport you into Total War and put you next to Grimgor, I think you might appreciate how big he actually is.
Huge.
In any event, so okay, we've talked about greenskin magic a bit. It's weird, not very well. Like you can have a lot of fun with it, exploring it.
Yeah.
We've talked about how you have these almost like priestly lords where the gods are getting involved. Like so what I want to ask that's interesting about like say Tzeentch magic or the magic of Hashut and stuff like that is, would you say it's more of, as far as like, so as a lot of them are explained as they don't necessarily, you know, they don't have formal teaching, they just kind of it just kind of comes to them, they're more shamans. Is that more because like when they're casting magic, the god is funneling it for them and kind of causing it to appear in a certain way, or putting ideas in their head about like say this?
So Tzeentch in particular has a lot of lore associated with each one of the spells being almost a part of Tzeentch that literally worms its way into your head. So you might get a Tazarluan Dalika, whatever spell sticking in your head. You literally can't get it out. It's stuck in there. The Chaos God has put it there. You can never use it, but it's tempting because you know if you do, your opponent will melt. And you're like, oh, I don't want to say it. I don't want to do the thing. Tzeentch in particular is known for this. It's a gift from the gods in particular. And the other gods are not really any different, but there's a certain amount of lore attached to all of them. And by that I mean that you can learn the spells not just by like random mutation, effectively. A gift from the god is received knowledge, but you can also learn them by reading books, by making your way through ancient grimoires, which perhaps has an old spell of plague, or perhaps something that will turn everyone into a frothing maniac.
Or being, I can even imagine like being passed down by like traditions or stories.
Oh, absolutely. Particularly if you go to see the Forbidden Library.
One of my favorites is like ogre magic. A lot of people I think miss out on a lot of the fun descriptions on how spells are cast because it kind of implies that there's like an exchange. Like you do X and the god rewards you with the knowledge of how to do Y. And the ogres talk about all their spells are them literally sacrificing different bits to the god. Like brain goblet is they're literally eating brains, and the great maw's like, oh, I like that. Here.
Let's get out my good old gastronomical magic. Yay!
Gastromancy is such a hilarious and yet terrifying lore of magic. Like
I love it.
Anyone that's bored, don't read the spell descriptions. They are genuinely terrifying. Like Toothcracker is like, like they have spells that are literally like they eat some bone marrow, and the regiment of guys in front of them, all their bones just break. Like just, it's like, good God.
Love it.
So this is a really good question. Song Power asks, are the winds of magic alive, or are they just wandering about?
Right. So, life in terms of the Warhammer
I guess it would mean,
world,
are they sentient? Is probably a better way to phrase it.
Right. So, sentience is light. Is light magic. That's where sentience is in many respects dropped if you're looking at the overall winds. If there was no light magic in the Warhammer world, no one would really have their intelligence. It's where intelligence is grounded. In the same way, if there was no life magic, no one would have their heartbeat pumping everything around, and they'd just be lassitudinous and they'd fall apart. In the Warhammer world, everything's sort of laced with magic, and it changes everything. And light is where sentience lies. And light is in everything. It's everywhere and it's diffuse. So anywhere where there's a concentration of magic, sentience follows. So if you get a big stagnation of magic and there's light around it, things can literally grow out of there, and basic intellects can grow. If you get a great convocation of a single wind in one area, and there are people worshipping it, that draws light to it and gives it sentience. Sentience is drawn to it by the very act of worship, or by the very act of belief, or sometimes just by the nature of the shapes of things, because light magic is channeled by particular shapes, pyramids in particular, which drag light magic. The hardest one, there's a reason that Khemri has its big black pyramid. It's not a black block, it's a pyramid, because that's what pulls down the Hysh. It's the hardest one to pull. It has to be that shape. All the rest are much easier to gather. Light is hard.
Yeah, that's why Nehekarns are so obsessed with the lore of light. It's divine. Like that's why they did all the pyramids and stuff, because they're trying to get those Nehekaran gods, and that's that is that relationship.
100%. So, are the winds themselves sentient? So this is a difficult question to answer neatly. You can say that the winds of magic can have sentient parts, as in, could you have an element of one of the winds be sentient? Yes. But is the wind as a whole sentient? That would then put it in the realm of a god. It wouldn't be a wind anymore.
Right.
So the next question is, are they demon gods? And in some parts of the lore, they say that there are 8 demons that blow out into the world. I've written a bit myself, dropped that into the Tome of Salvation because it fit there really well. Inside the Tome of Corruption, they also make those sort of loose potential suggestions that there's 8 demon gods that work beneath the other gods. And that pulls back an even older lore where each one of the winds used to be associated with one of the Chaos gods. For example, the gold wind and the blue wind used to be Tzeentch's winds. The very first iteration of that, White Dwarf number... maybe 114, I'm going to guess. I'm going to say 114. Might be 113. Doesn't really matter. But directly associated, the purple wind, that was directly associated with Slaanesh, for example. So each of the winds were associated with different gods at some points. So you could say that if you wanted to hark back to that lore as a modern writer, you'd have some foundation for saying that. You could have some foundation for saying that the winds themselves are nothing more than fragmented parts of the Force Chaos powers. I think it's probably bobbins, but it's certainly a really fun thing to dive down into if you want to look at the old lore and see how it's been repositioned. You can say, though, that elements of those winds exist in a variety of different forms, and that the winds themselves have gathered around and incarnated when the winds go mental. Too much of the wind everywhere. And they gather around certain individuals because they did that in the end times.
Yes, and this kind of ties into as far as like the little tidbits of sentience and also the elements coming alive. There are elemental spirits in Warhammer Fantasy. Like there are full on just elementals, which are just embodiments of the winds, which I very strongly think we will get to see more of. They've actually been explored more and more thanks to Cubicle 7, where at the very end of Warhammer Fantasy we had the incarnate elementals introduced, which are giant masses of one of the winds, where they only gave us 3 originally, being beast, death, and fire, but they're like
just out of curiosity, do you know if the beast one got added to the Middenheim books? I commissioned it to go in there.
Yes,
yes. Excellent.
The Bloody Hidesman is in the Middenheim book, and if I recall correctly, it was weird that he is in the book. I don't remember if they gave him a profile, because they gave him, I think they did, but they also put his profile in the Winds of Magic book. I think he's in both.
Okay, random.
But yes, the Bloody Hidesman is in both books.
At least he's somewhere.
Yeah, and they also added, I think, all the other ones to the Winds of Magic book. But in any event, so they gave us 3 originally, but there's one for all 8 of them. They're talked about in the lore. They have different, and they're terrifying. They are extremely powerful, reality warping nightmares that like only an idiot would try to interact with.
And it's worth saying that they're not new.
Yeah, they're kind of like I think they're as close as you can get to a god, just wandering around,
walking the material. Yeah, totally. And don't think they're new. There's been the concepts of these walking elementals since like Warhammer 3rd edition and Warhammer 1st edition fantasy roleplay as well. They had different names back then. The Viadag, for example, the element of life, that would be then translated into an element of life, a magic instead, and would be effectively exactly the same entity. The same with an element of death, which was in there as well. And they can be manifest as elemental creatures here, and I think they're pretty damn spiffy.
Yeah, and there's even lesser ones too, which they're starting to explore. And I would argue that if Araby one day hopefully gets an update, Araby would have a lot of interaction with the lesser elemental spirits, where it's like
all over the place.
Yeah, Djinns are almost certainly elemental spirits of light, and like Ifrits are probably elemental spirits of fire, and stuff like that. And that would be a very rational way to explain those, and also because they would still have character, and they would still be entities that the Arabians captured and drew the knowledge,
the magic from.
Which
well,
is
one of the
magic.
Yeah, one of the original attempts to explain Araby, and also to a degree the lands of the dead and why they were the way they were, was that the further away you got from the poles, the less that magic was freely blowing, because you were further away from the source of magic. So there was a lot of talk about Arabians using elementals, using jinn, using various types of spirit, for want of another word, to empower their magics. So rather than them being the spellcasters, they had all of their elementals around them that allowed them to be spellcasters per se, which was quite fun. And that is also one of the reasons why the Nekarans in particular were so reliant on their divine magic over traditional magic, and had found a method of pulling down Hysh in great quantities, a magic that's normally very difficult to get hold of, and then manipulating that, and why they were such a religious people in general. And I think that was quite a nice, tidy way of answering it. Doesn't mean that they'll stick with that as they move into different iterations. So
yeah, so we have Kabanda wandering in here, my least favorite character. He asks in all caps, while I could ask him myself, is Khorne anti-magic or just anti-spells? Does he hate magic itself, or does he see spellcasting as cowardly anyway? Skulls. Thank you.
For the throne of Khorne. Okay, so there's multiple ways to answer this one. Let's jump on the obvious one. The core question there, is he anti-magic or anti-spells? Yes. The god himself has famously, multiply, repeatedly shown himself to be both anti-magical and anti-spells, which is hilarious, because to summon up Khornate demons, you would assume there would need to be magic of some sort. There would need to be some form of ritual. And the answer is yes, but not a magical one. Because you summon up those great bloodthirsty demons using a variety of other means. Could you summon them with magic? Yes, demonology could do it. And that Khorne would almost certainly hate you for doing so. That doesn't mean that demonologists wouldn't do that, because demonologists are crazy motherfuckers who are summoning demons, for goodness sake. They'll happily summon demons that the gaming gods themselves would rather were not there. But for your Khornate cultists, completely different kettle of fish. They're working on far more material things. They're working on magical artifacts, arguably. Or if you go back to the old version of Khorne, they were using technology. In the old version of Khorne, if you got yourself a Khorne army advancing on you, you likely had las cannons in there, for fuck's sake. They're giant, huge, massive demons. A lot of them were made of metal. And a lot of the big war machines that you see in 40k were also in Warhammer. Big scorpion-like demon engines making their way down.
You still have
like the
Chaos Grinders, Juggernauts, Skull Cannons.
They're all there. And there's and the original thought behind that was zero magic, pure tech, because that was their big advantage. They had tech. And that got really strongly suppressed over time as they tried to give Warhammer and 40k their own individual flavors and discreetly part them aside from each other. Nobody wanted to see heavy bolters on Warhammer battlefields. Well, I say nobody. A lot of people want to see that.
I will staunchly tell those people, go home to 40k, get out of my fantasy.
Quite. But that used to be what 40k, the good old Khorne side was. And the more you killed, the more chance your demons popped up. Because, you know, Khorne loves the blood and he doesn't really care where it comes from. And that was the ritual. The ritual was just the slaying.
Yeah,
and the slaying brought the demons.
It seems in a lot of the more recent lore, like which was explored as well in Total War Warhammer 3 with the Khorne cultists, that they're almost kind of taking more of a religious priestly angle to it, where it's like they're not wizards, but they're like unleashing rituals and stuff that and worshiping to rip open a portal that gets Khorne's attention enough that he unleashes some demons for them.
Totally. That works very well with the existing thought process of the demon gods, the chaos gods, your ruinous powers, so to speak. They are more than happy to touch the material realm because they want to destroy it. That's their plan. But for whatever reason, they can't unless there's certain specific circumstances in place. For example, the correct ritual, for example, the correct spell, or some great waxing of magic where there's just enough magic for them to reach out and touch. And the closer you are to the gates, the more likely you're going to be affected by them and their individual touch and mutate. Blessings of the gods or just chaos and what it is.
All right. So There are some more questions and lores we need to get through. One that I think is relatively easy to answer, but I'm curious what you're going to say, because to all of my research, there is talk about something called blood magic, which to my understanding is another word for dark magic, as opposed to a genuinely separate lore.
Yeah, I think so too. When I was putting together my first stab at the magic book, there was some bring up for that, and I was intending on conflating it then. Other people may have done other things because I've not caught up with the most recent books and what was released for, say, for example, on the roleplay side. And that would be one way of viewing it. Another way would be to look at the very nature of the human corpus and the soul that it presents and drawing the physical spirit out of it and using that. And that, I think, could make for a really interesting alternative view of magic and the ways that you could use it. And it would tie quite closely through to what the ogres do. Because in some respects that they're using body parts to say, look at me, God, give me what I want, crunch. And there are certain things you could marry through to there, but I can't say that I have a strong opinion on that one.
Yeah, and people in chat are pointing it out, and that if they're going to expand it, the Naga of Koresh will probably be where that gets expanded, because they are talked about
good idea
obsessively of using blood magic. Yeah, we'll have to see what happens with that. But from everything that I've ever read in like Black Library and the Army books and stuff, it just seems like it's usually like, oh, Dark Elves are performing blood magic. And it literally just seems like they're sacrificing people to fuel dark magic, which is not unusual.
Yeah, Dark Elves are a funny old one because they are dark magic to their core, but they use dark magic in a variety of ways that most certainly the lore doesn't recognize, but they do. Dark Elves use necromancy. They do. Look at look at all the spirits that they've got hanging around, swirling souls around the great cliffs of Dhar. I can't forget which one it was. It's not Harganeth, it's the other one. Doesn't matter.
Oh,
one of the Hars. Maybe. This is really annoying me now. I'm going to look it up afterwards because I'm annoyed. But they've got souls, and that's necromancy. They're using dark magic to do necromancy. They can do necromancy. They taught Nagash dark magic. The core concept of necromancy came from the Dark Elves, and then Nagash took it in a completely different way and literally didn't manifest just spirits, but empowered them to create skeletons and reform bodies because Nagash was a mentalist and took it in a completely different direction. But yeah, the Dark Elves do pretty much everything with their magic. I would not really worry too much about words blood magic being used beyond the fact that they've got tons of blood rituals which they use in a variety of ways.
Yeah, and I think that's also why you'll see that phrase used a lot in like
Haggrave
and chaos and stuff. Oh yeah, Haggrave. Yeah, probably Haggrave. A different kind of lore of magic that I think is worth addressing, though I don't think it's as different as people might suspect it is, because there are some interesting truths behind it. What about the lores that seem like they come from the land, such as the lore of Athel Loren or the two lores of Kislev?
Okay, so Athel Loren is nothing more than a twist of the existing lores. I don't think the lore of Athel Loren is anything more than a different set of spells that uses the existing magic with its overabundance of Ghur, its overabundance of Ghyran, and manifesting them with a whole host of new spells. You can argue that it's an entirely different thing, but I don't think you need to. There's no real reason to do so.
Yeah, I would agree.
Where on the other side, it's a completely different kettle of fish. The lore of ice is one of two things, both of which I've written into the game, and they contradict each other.
On, Andy.
And it could be something else entirely on top of that. So let's go through the ones that it could be. Right. So number one, it's another wind of magic. Here's one example of how that can make sense. The winds of magic, as we've been told, there's 8 of them, and they are universal. Everybody sees them, perceives them, but most can't see the light wind. Most can't do the light wind. To many, there's only 8. They just, there's only 7, pardon me, there's not 8, because they can't see Hysh. Hysh is so beyond them. They just can't even consider what that wind in the slightest. To some, the grey wind is really difficult. There's only really 6. And so we go down until you get some wizards who only see 1. Now, the elves have long been known for not necessarily telling the truth about what everything is. And they have on more than one occasion said that there is a spectrum. It is not simply 8. It is a far more complicated circle than the 8 we perceive. And this has got grounding inside the existing pact. For example, I mentioned that there was Sleeve, the pink wind of magic that's so difficult to see. It's a magic of the mind. It sits above Hysh and arguably has been conflated with Hysh. You've got Orch, which is the orange wind of magic, where Ghur would then be brown. Orch is mentioned in a couple of places, only 2 as I recall, but does exist. And in Kislev, you could have Kishel, which would be the ice wind of magic. Now, how could you justify that? There's multiple ways. For example, let's say there are 8 demons that work beneath the gods that are blowing in the magic from the world. One of them could sit beneath Kislev and perhaps has rebelled and is Mother Kislev, flooding the area around it. Kislev is in a state of almost constant ice and permafrost, but it's on exactly the same parallel as the Empire. No reason for it. There's something going on in Kislev. Mother Kislev is quite different from the rest of the various Old World nations and beyond around it. So one way of responding that would be to say there is just another wind of magic. It's coming from a demon. It's coming from a god. It's coming from something. It's Mother Kislev that sits beneath there, and she's channeling it up, and she's giving it to
Ancient Widow.
Yeah. The Ancient Widow, exactly. The Ancient Widow. I named that the Ancient Widow. Way back when I was writing the Kislev book a bajillion years ago. So the Ancient Widow is your next one, and the Ancient Widow could be a spirit of the land, could be a demon, it could be anything else. What you can say for certain is that if you go by the ancient legends of the Ice Witches, they came from beyond the World Edge Mountain. They were sitting on the other side somewhere, presumably north of where the Chaos Dwarves are just now.
Eastern Steppe.
And they were, the Eastern Steppe. They're sitting up there doing their thing, and the Ancient Widow, Mother Kislev, calls them. So they come in, and approximately 1,000 years ago, kick ass, chew gum, and wipe out a massive chunk of the Empire, because this used to be the Empire's land. They take over what used to be Ostland, what used to be the land of the Ungals, the Ropsmen, and all the other tribes that were there. They take out the Ostermarkers, weaken them so much that the Talabheim land pretty much takes over Ostermark for hundreds of years, rules it. They swipe in, and for 1,000 years, we've got ourselves ice witches, only witches, that, depending on the lore you use, some of them got big beardy ice shamans as well, depending on the lore you want. But only ice witches. I remember playing a computer game with that ages ago. But I turned it all into only women. It was me that made the choice. I had a discussion with Games Workshop and said, I want to do this. I gave the reasons why, and they were like, go. So I wrote all of the witches in the Kislev books. When we did that, and all that lore was written for that, the intent behind it was that there was something underneath Kislev that was providing them with the ice magic. It could be a rogue wind of magic, or alternatively, it could just be a rogue god or a rogue demon. It was not answered in the book. I obviously had my own preferences as to what it was, but it wasn't answered so that other people at a later date could come in and, I don't know, do what Total War does with it and turn it into something slightly different again. And then, presumably, when they release it as an army list for the old world, they do something different yet again. And that's how it works with the iterative nature of Warhammer's design. You try to, rather than confine future authors, you try to give them loads of cool that they can go, well, that's the bit I like, and then run with it. So when I created that part of Kislev, I purposefully didn't nail it down so that others, if it was decided that it was a good idea, could. But I did nail down that ice magic that had a source, where previously ice magic had no source. It was introduced in the 4th edition army list for the Empire, with Zarina Catherine having it, obviously. But there was zero justification for where it came from. And when Gav Thorpe came in and did the same thing and discussed some of the ancient ice queens and all the rest, again, zero justification for where it came from. So it was nailed down in the Kislev book for Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition that it came from somewhere without defining exactly where. You want it to be the land, you want it to be a spirit, you want it to be a god, you want it to be a demon. It could be all of those. But to conclude it all, the Gospodars are, by definition, much like probably the Turigans, a chaos tribe, if you want to view it as such, in that that's where they came from. Now, they might have become good guys, but they came from what would be called, by most Imperial scholars, a chaos tribe from the chaos waste, the very edge of it.
Yeah, so fun little just comment there from Mornington Crescent. Would have to be a very powerful mirror, but that would actually be really fun. And for those, yeah, and the lore of Tempest is a new lore, but it's literally just the lore of ice, but in the air. Like it's a delineation of the lore of ice, which I like a lot. Like the idea that, oh yeah, ice storms, tempests, like you just move it off the ground. So then we have some other lore.
Hags.
Yeah,
Hags.
so hags.
I created them too.
So hags, spirits, lores that seem to work with entities.
Yeah, let's loosely define the hags because I created them whole cloth. They didn't exist before, but I was desperate, absolutely desperate to mix up the magic as it had been presented in both Warhammer, the battle game, and the fantasy roleplay game, because the many fables and the lore that Kislev was drawing upon were redolent with spirits in a way that, for example, had been loosely played with wood elves, had been loosely played with high elves, had been loosely played with generally elves, really. They're the ones that are generally doing the spirity thing, but have been completely ignored as if those spirits just decided to walk away from humanity. Yet simultaneously saying that humanity had ancient forms of magic. So I was very keen to show that humanity had ancient traditions of magic that were not laced full of chaos, that they had ancient forms of magic that they could do successfully. And that's where the hags were originally founded from. And then later on, the hedge witches that came later. I had another, I think, 6 or 7 witch lores that I planned to write. The second edition came to an end. So what are they doing? They are loosely drawing magic from the spirits of the land. And they also believe in the Ancient Widow. They also believe in Mother Kislev. But in a very different form, and all of her children, and using those children to allow them to fight off against the worst that comes from the north. They are the Ungol side of the Gospodar Ungol issues over in Kislev. And to quickly sum it, they are awesome. I love the hags.
Has Andy heard about? Did you? Mother Ostenka is new, correct?
Yes, she is. There was a whole bunch of mothers added to the Kislev book, but that was, I think, created by Andy Hall, actually.
Yeah, okay. And hopefully,
I'm pretty sure.
Hopefully, we'll see her soon.
I'd love that. I've got a lot of ancient hags. Some of them are proper ancient. I love them.
So,
Baba Yagas
asks a question that I know the answer to, but I think is worth talking about: is can you draw a spell from more than one wind at once?
Yes.
There's actually, for anyone that wants to read about it, I want to say, oh gosh, I can't remember if it's in the 4th edition Winds of Magic or if it's in the 2nd edition Realms of Sorcery, or maybe it's from the Uberstrike book. I don't remember. Somewhere there's an adventure hook about a group of wizards from the colleges of magic who could channel more than one wind, and they started writing down spells using more than one wind, but they knew they were going to be in a shitload of trouble if they got caught. So they hid their book, and I think it actually turns up at an auction as an adventure hook that you can try and get your hands on.
Yeah. So can you? Yes. When you merge magic, it almost always causes Dhar. Are there ways to avoid that? Yes, there are. I mean, look what's happening over in Cathay. They're effectively using 4 winds and finding methods of combining them to create a new whole out of them. They're taking the elemental winds and combining them to create a new whole. And that's good, because it shows that it can be done. Is it dangerous? Yes. The elves tricked the Empire into only channeling one wind. Depends what you mean by trick. They made them safe. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You can't make a mistake if you only channel one.
Yeah, it's worth noting with Cathay as well that the Cathayans are very strict about humans are not allowed to use the lore of yin and yang. Only the Shukenguns can, because they have dragon blood in their veins, which seems to make them more magical, and they live longer. So they have time, because it talks about in the Cathayan lore, you have to master high magic first. Once you've mastered high magic, then they teach you the secrets of the lore of yin and yang, which is, well, they teach you one of them. You don't get to know both, which is really fascinating. And I'm really glad that they also, show us which lores are which. Like the lore of yin, I believe, is amber, amethyst, shadow, and metal. And then
yes, it is.
Yes, and then the lore of yang is fire,
that's
light,
water, fire,
light, and
stone, light.
Whoever the hell.
So Azyr stone.
Yeah, and heavens.
Yeah, that's it.
which is very, very fun and helps inform a lot of really cool things about those lores. And we're even learning
Totally
about some
does.
things they could do with it. Like it's been revealed in the newest short story that the Moon Empress learned how to create the Onyx Crowmen from the lore of Yin. Like they are elemental creations of Yin, which is nuts. And also,
And
they're very
I
scary.
think wild and awesome because
it's great.
they're taking things in a new direction, and that's ultimately why the previous writers wrote what they wrote, so that someone else can come along and say, "Well, what about if I combine that and make something new?" And that's why I love Warhammer. It's just great.
So you can absolutely have spells that draw from multiple winds, and those spells can get pretty crazy. Like they can do some weird shit, but like in really fun ways. And there's a lot of really and that's also can lead to like a lot of things like magical constructs or elemental creations. Like the Onyx Roman are not constructs they are constructs, but not like in a sense that they are inhabiting something. They are spirits that do not have like a physical they're not like Fen beasts, for instance.
Can you bring up these cards comment? Because I think that's a really good one. But aren't dragons pre-Old One race? Yes. On the planet? Yes. And made more mundane creatures? No. That's the big one.
Dragons
the answer
magical as fuck.
Dragons are magical as fuck. And because they are, that means we know that the geomantic web that the old ones created was also magic as fuck. What they were working on is a world that is not mundane. When the winds of magic came flooding through, that was just different. And possibly releasing everything that was trapped and making it different, but not mundane initially.
There are some very, very explicit, like not hence they're just flat out stated. The Warhammer world had magic before the old ones came to it. They did not invent magic in it. Now it had a lot less magic than it does now.
Or different.
Yeah, or at least different magic.
Or contained. Perhaps.
Most evidence seems to suggest that there might not have been winds, but if there were winds, they were like very, very tiny little like holes somewhere. But they weren't these yawning giant fuck you portals that are just a deluge, now, which is the problem. Like demons, more than likely demons probably couldn't have manifested back in the day. At least not without like really weird circumstances. It seems like a lot of the magic was contained within the earth, which is where, the geomantic web is. And the geomantic web, like to put it clear for people, it is obscenely powerful compared to almost every other form of magic. Like the Slann, when they want to use the big boy spells, they pull on the geomantic web. They don't use it for everything but like if they want to shift the continents, that's a geomantic web spell. They're going to pull from that. Now, whether that's because it's more of a storage vessel that just has a lot of magic, or maybe because it's a more powerful form of magic, I don't know.
I think if we're looking at it in terms of how most modern writers will make it, it will just be a giant bank. I mean, that's basically how they'll write it. And I remember reading something, I can't even remember how long ago this was now. It was reasonably early in the whole geomantic web thing, as to what it was doing and what it potentially was. And it was effectively like one gigantic enforced storing of chaos. Chaos does not naturally occur. It just doesn't. Dhar does. Dhar, when the winds of magic merge and collapse and stagnate anywhere, particularly around old broken waystones, for those of you who were here at the beginning of the stream, Dhar just collects, and Dhar can sometimes solidify into warpstone naturally without having to come from elsewhere. Dhar is nasty stuff, but chaos doesn't exist naturally. It has to be formed. And you could argue the geomantic web is that. It's one enormous web creating and storing chaos, which can then be unleashed at particular points, but to do so is to use it. So you only want to use it in the most dire circumstances.
Rogan, the answer to this is yes. I'm not going to get like super into it because like time, but like, yes. Andy wrote some really cool stuff on that. We have
I did. I wrote the Harmony of the Sphere section.
There's a channel.
Yes.
There's a video on the channel about planets and stuff. But like the old ones, there's a reason they moved the planets to be in a very exact harmony. It was not because they were like, oh, that's aesthetic. No, there's a very specific logic behind it.
Yep.
Now, we don't necessarily understand what the cause of, or like what the result of what they did is, but they did it. Just like how the old ones shifted the continents around. Like the Warhammer world was originally Pangea. It was one supercontinent, and the old ones came and were like, and they cracked it and split it all up. which pissed off the dragons a lot. Fun fact. They were not thrilled with that, along with a number of other decisions.
If you want to try and figure out what that whole thing is, think of it like a giant set of gears. They're all connected together. They're all working towards one thing. And if you wanted to find something they were doing, you could argue that the whole thing is set up just to make the geomantic web work.
Yeah, which is a reasonable thing. Like the geomantic web was probably not nearly. I think it actually explains maybe in the old one of the Lizardman books that the geomantic web was not nearly as efficient, and the old ones made it obscenely efficient.
Yeah,
towards some greater plan that was the great plan, which debatably seems to have been to kill chaos, but obviously didn't work out super well. All right, so getting on to some other questions. So this one keeps coming up, so let's address it. This is a new lore of magic. The lore of the
I know the one.
Andy, got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I do. It's clearly at its heart, it's your Pirates of the Caribbean lore.
Yeah, man.
That's what it is. But because of that, it's clearly at heart necromantic sorta. But it's got so much.
Yeah, I don't know if Andy's had fun look or had the chance to delve into like a lot of the little hints that are noted, but it does seem to be very heavily linked with Stromfels as well.
Yeah, the god. And when you're looking at things like this, these are the great joys of the Warhammer world, because these sort of lores should be all over the place. And when I was writing it, I got constantly told I couldn't add those extra lores because they weren't in the battle game. And it took some significant arguing to eventually get things like ice magic added, then the lore of the hags added, then the lore of, say, hedge witches added, and similar. And this sort of thing should be the norm, because the Warhammer world is deep, complex, and varied, and different people in different parts of the world will be creating magics according to their individual needs and the way that magic itself will manifest around them. Undead folks working in the middle of the sea full of Ghyran are going to be creating big undead swishy-washy magical shit that does that. So what do I think it is? I think it's just a standard manifestation of the winds expressing themselves in a classic combination. Is it particularly weird or unexpected, or should we look at it as non-canon, as some people love to do, particularly when it's just in, say, for example, the computer game and it's not anywhere else? Yeah, no. That's the sort of shit that I would be throwing into Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and absolutely adoring it, because it's awesome.
Yeah. If people think like if we ever got the Fishmen, like non-ironically, if we ever got Fishmen and they did not have their own interpretation of the Lord of the Abyss or whatever, I would be extremely upset because no way they would use magic that we understand. Like they would probably be using like Depths of the Ocean. It'd be like Ulgu, Ghyran, and Ghur, and it'd be weird.
Yeah, and I'd be looking for probably pulling on some. I mean, the magical world, the fated place itself that is Warhammer. We looking to. I'm drawing a little bit of that, because down there you're a little bit closer to something different. You know, that pelagic feel, the depths of the deeps of the black of the ocean. What is down there? And if you're not going to go a little bit old one, horrible, Cthulhu-esque, then what are you doing? So yeah, you would most certainly be adding something a bit different, in the same way that the hags didn't take the route that everybody expected, but made a characterful addition to what Warhammer is.
Yeah, I think we've touched on pretty much every lore in concept, at least, as far as like they're either god adjacent or spirit adjacent or the winds themselves. And then there are characters that have now there is a lot of fun to be explored in. Like there are some lores of magic that have been very meticulously created versus magics that are kind of more naturally occurring, which is a lot of fun. Yeah. So like a lot of the more religious lores, like the lore of the Great Maw and stuff like that, tend to just kind of pop into reality thanks to these entities. But like Nagash's necromancy was very meticulous. Like Nagash used a lot of formulas, and there's the whole corpse geometries, which is like a really complex mathematical formula, and they use a lot of the language of Nehek. And like a lot, what's weird about the lore of necromancy that's really fun is they actually use a lot of priestly prayers, almost in a sense, invoking on a lot of that old Nehekaran wisdom, because the Nehekarans had an obsession with the transition from life and death. Boy, they were obsessed with that shit. But anyway, so the only thing that I see a lot of people asking about that I think is worth kind of just touching on a little bit more is a lot of people are going, okay, I understand that priests use magic in a sense, but still, what are they?
Okay, so there is not a clear definition, but there is several examples in the text where answers were provided. For example, Teclis rather famously arrived and said, "See all your priests, they're just wizards. That's it. That's all they are." Now, I can't, because he couldn't, stop some of their spells because of the nature of the way that they're conjured. They're weak. They're beneath him. They're actually difficult for him to perceive because of the nature of their creation, but they are nevertheless spells. Magic is a gift from the gods. Magic is quite literally what we were given by our gods, and what you're doing is nothing more than a debased version of that. Teclis was pretty fucking clear in it, categorical. I wrote that bit, so I know it pretty well. However, there is other bits in there that contradict that, because I also wrote those. And they say almost the exact opposite, that the gods themselves are what ensures that those magics cannot be dispelled, cannot be stopped, cannot be interrupted, because they are divine in influence, divine in inspiration. And as we said way early in the stream, the truth of it, what lies behind it all, is that it is all in Warhammer, largely speaking, magic, because the gods themselves are sourced in that. So you can answer it either way if you wish to do so. I could answer it one way, and then I could easily answer the other.
I was gonna say, I bet I could bring up a really fun, like, direct source that contradicts it.
And both would be, to a degree, correct.
Yeah, if anyone, unfortunately, unless you want to spend like $1 billion, you'll have to find an ebook version. But if you ever want to read some really, really fun back and forths on it from an in-character lore perspective, check out Richter Kless's writings in the Liber Chaotica. He does a whole chapter on the nature of priests, and it's great because you have the elves being like, oh, this is ridiculous, like they're just spells, like we can even dispel some of them, like obviously they're spells, but then there's actually a written response from Volkmar the Grim, which is so well written, and Volkmar takes the elves to task, and it is great. Like, a lot of people think Volkmar the Grim is just like Battle Pope. He is so genius. Like, he is such a genuinely careful, considerate old man who thinks very carefully, and like he's brilliant. He's such a great character. Like, yes, obviously he yells Sigmar and hits people with a big staff hammer when he goes out to the battlefield, but like his understanding of the divine, because he doesn't just, when he hears from the College's Magic of the Elves, he doesn't just go, oh no, that's all horseshit. He goes, I think there is truth there, but I think there's more to it than that. And he delves in and it gets wild, which is why he's one of my favorite human characters.
Volkmar Hindestern, he's the man.
Yeah, he's awesome character. Yeah, hopefully that answers a lot of questions on that. If Les Andy sees anything in the comment section that he wants to call out, I'm gonna start asking questions from the Discord just because there's a ton of them.
Yep, I'm cool with that. There's nothing that's jumped out at me that's worth
some of these people I will kind of cut down or skip if we've already answered it, so forgive me if that happens. Okay, so this is a really good one. So Scythe Petals asks, with the lore of Nehekara, it seems like a particularly interesting lore because it's very heavily inspired from a meeting of light and death, but also has a lot of that godliness. And I will say, Nehekara is very interesting because in the old lore, it was priests. Like, it was exactly like the priests of the
100%.
They were not traditional wizards. They cast prayers. But then in 8th edition, Games Workshop came out, and I think it was because of the way prayers worked rule-wise. They were very, very weak in the battle game, and they could be dispelled, so they were almost impossible to cast. So they ended up turning it into a lore of magic, but I think that actually worked out very interestingly for Nehekara. And not a bad way. And it also kind of explained a lot of its relationship with necromancy a bit better, I think. But he says, is it just so with Nehekara being more divinely inspired than many other lores and pulling very heavily on light and death, is it just a variant of necromancy due to its ties to the realm of souls and being able to bring people back from the realm of souls and put them in their skeleton forms or their statue forms? Or is it something else entirely?
I would say something else entirely. It would be far too easy to make it necromancy. Necromancy is bleak, black, dark, horrible stuff. In the Warhammer world, necromancy is not like other magic, other than just dark magic in general. It's proper horrible stuff. It's delving into the worst viscera that magic allows.
Almost one of the worst expressions of dark magic. It's ugly.
Yeah, it's proper ugly. I mean, the idea that your mate can stand back up again after that aside, it's a very different style, and it's a type of magic that is very closely related to several of the elemental lores at different points, particularly light. Which is the wind of intelligence, the wind of being able to make something sentient that may not have been before. So the close relations that it has with light magic and the other magics to a lesser degree, broadly speaking, make me feel that it more than happily sits outside of the Dhar wheelhouse. It's far more in the knowingly divine magic wheelhouse, as in, we believe our magic comes from a god, but we are casting these spells, we are doing these rituals, and it's us doing it. It's stuff that can't be dispelled. We are going to be having magical battles with what we have, but these spells come from our gods and to a degree are influenced by them, and it's a matter of belief more than necessarily fact in some cases. But I think they definitely lie on that side rather than the cackling necromancer side, when they are not that, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot with what Andy said earlier about like the color spectrum of magic as opposed to just the 8 block winds. Nehekara in many ways kind of just probably discovered their own color, in that they kind of seem to have landed on, I don't know what color it would be, but they kind of landed between light and death in a lot of ways, because a lot of their spells are about invoking memory, restoring the past to corpses so they fight as good as they did when they were alive, while also giving sentience to statues and stuff like that, which is really, really cool. Next question. Oh my gosh, inner workings of necromancy. Go watch my video on the nature of the soul. Manfred von Karstein breaks it down big time. Just go watch.
Good job on that one. Liber Necris. Go read the Liber Necris. Watch that video. Job done.
Oh, thanks. Winds of Magic. Oh, okay. So Andy already answered. How does it look when a priest calls on the winds of magic? And the answer is most wizards don't see it.
No, not necessarily. There's a deep welling of faith. There'll be light magic all over the place. So those who can perceive the light wind,
so would they be like glowing?
High elves, for example, they'll see them. They'll probably have halos of light around their minds, perhaps anywhere else that they believe their holiness comes from. Halos of light magic are not uncommon. Wristbands as well, because many of them believe that they're channeling the power of their god, so they'll have glowing light gathering around them. So Hysh is a very real component of divine and religious magic, and elves in particular are very capable of seeing that. It's one of the reasons they believe that all priestly magic is basically just magic, because they can see the light magic involved, and pretty much no one else can. Even some of the light wizards who are very good at light magic don't really see it that well, because it's such a diffuse wind.
Roop asks, relation to Bad Moon with goblin magic. Well, Bad Moon is literally Morslib, which is a giant borderline sentient, creepily sentient hunk of warpstone. So like it has a lot of magical influence on the planet.
Huge.
And considering that it is literally an embodiment of chaos, I bet it loves goblins.
Yeah, it's a giant magic battery that wanders around, giving anything that's underneath it magic.
Yeah, this is great. You were going to talk about this earlier, but we got distracted. What is with serpents and Hysh?
Okay, so all of the winds have got some anthropomorphic details hidden away in them here and there. Hysh, for example, is closely associated in multiple places with a serpent. And indeed, some believe may indeed be somewhat of a representation of Sotek, which may mean it's very closely attached to and allied with the geomantic web in general, and that Hysh may in fact just be one step away from light magic chaos.
Told my the Lisbon writers that, so they could have given my skink priest the lore of light, jerks.
That would have been amazing, because it would have tied into various. But you'll find many of the old models, they're wrapped around with snakes that are popping up. Now, obviously, they were tying upon some of the Egyptian iconography, but it became redolent through the course of 3rd through up to about 5th area. And it wasn't just that. There's little drops about the serpent of knowledge and the serpent of this, and it's all tied into Hysh. And Hysh in particular, even the name Hysh, is relatively serpentine. Now, has that been developed to any great degree? The answer is no. It's been dropped at in an artifact here. It's been dropped at a slight description over there. It's been dropped at in the Light College has this, and this in it. But it most certainly has been dropped. And I intended when my first plan for the Colleges of Magic stuff was out, I was going to be diving relatively hard into that one because I'd already touched upon it in the old Tome of Salvation. Maybe it was in there. Yes, it was when Sotek and Hysh were gently attached to each other to show that there was a snake-like god over in the Empire that predated other stuff, was sitting on some old Talestine carvings. All these things look together. I feel like Pepe de Silva needs to get out here and tie the fuckers together.
Well, now that you say that, it would have made so much more sense for Hysh to have a significant effect within the Cult of Sotek. And also, like with Tehinuin and the rivalry with Clan Pestilence, would have made much more sense through the Hyshian angle, especially because like Tehinuin unleashes the engine of the gods, and like he brings back all this ancient knowledge to the Lizardmen, and he starts like a new age that of enlightenment. That should have been a Hysh thing.
Enlightenment is Hysh.
Yeah, I think
that's the center of it. Yeah.
I'm really upset that story thread got missed by those writers, because like Beast wasn't adding anything new. It's like, oh, it's Snake, it's an animal. Because like Tehinuin would have been so much more interesting, and the Cult of Sotek skink priest would have been far more unique if they could uniquely wield the wind of Hysh for priests.
They made the mistake yet again of looking at a species and saying, "Oh, they've got lizards. It must be animals."
So Angel Tupra, how does the magic blessing of the lady? So the blessing of the lady, we actually have explicit writings on how it works, and it's kind of like, imagine it's like not the Matrix, but like if someone were to shoot something at a Bretonian knight, then it just kind of like turns aside at the last second, or if it's an arrow, it shatters. Like it hits an invisible barrier. It's quite literally like physics doesn't work right because there's divine intervention, is the blessing of the lady in a traditional sense. Is how you would probably see it. Like if you had a bunch of Empire handgunners and they were like fire and they all shot at the Grail Knight, the bullets just wouldn't hit him. And he would just keep walking towards them and they're like, oh shit. Which is something I wish happened a little more. Granted, the roleplay game tends to be from an Empire perspective, so we don't get to hear about a lot of the terrifying ladyisms. Like, because the Peruvian Wars would have been, or how do you say it? The Paravan.
Which one? Paravanese?
Yes, thank you.
Paravanese.
Yes. There were probably a number of instances where the Empire thought that faith, steel, and gunpowder had them, and then they ran into a different kind of faith, and they were like, uh-oh.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've talked about the Skaven lores. They're like the Chaos lores. You know, it's Dhar with some influence from the Great Horned Rat, mostly speaking.
There's a good mixture of other winds of magic in there as well, if you want to be dirty about it. But anyone that's using Dhar will almost certainly be using other winds for different jobs. For example, the plague side of it will have a heavy amount of Ghyran.
I would love for you to talk about that for a sec.
The Warlock Engineers.
Ghyran.
Ghyran in particular, because Ghyran is...
Ghyran, healing. It's like, no, it's...
No. Ghyran, when you get an overabundance of Ghyran, it turns everything overripe, pustulant and messy. It's the wind of cancer. It's the wind of life going mad and overboiling. And disease is nothing more than life. Don't forget that. The disease, almost all disease, is nothing more than a life within you that's not part of you. And Ghyran will promote that. Indeed, one of the spells that was set up to go into the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay game was a bunch of spells that, if you had diseases, would also make the disease worse if you got the healing magic. So you get your wounds back, but your disease gets worse. Because the life magic suffuses through you and sadly brings everything to life, not just your own body. So yes, Ghyran is very much at the core of many a Nurgle spell and many a Skaven spell. It's pretty much in there in the same way that gold is at the core of many a Warlock Engineer. and how they present the world and understand the world. There'll be gold magic redolent through those warlocks.
Yeah, through the ruin spells. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And there'll be a lot of that in there.
In like the lore of stealth.
Indeed, and Azyr with the warp lightning that pops out. All of them twisted by Dhar into something terrible and awful, and often an enormous amount of warpstone because hey, who doesn't like a good chunk of that?
Something I wanted to ask that comes up from a question in the Discord as I'm kind of working down here is, as magic has been forced to fit into certain bubbles to be interpreted into the battle game or video games and stuff. One thing that I noticed that I think I fell for a long time before getting more into the deeper lore behind magic and realizing it's not necessarily the case is that the battle games they did kind of a weird thing with the chaos gods where they kind of tried to shunt them into representing a singular lore of magic. So like, they're like, okay, if you're a Nurgle wizard, you may have Nurgle or death. If you are a Slaanesh guy, you get Slaanesh or shadow. And if you're Tzeentch, you get Tzeentch or metal. And those are which those lores do heavily correspond with those gods, but I don't think it's as easy as the battle game likes to try and kind of present it.
Yeah, I agree completely. Chaos at its very nature is not limited because that's the very nature of the word chaos. For every example that you get for a chaos creature that sits in the battle game and has to be limited by the very nature of the game, because you have to have equal points, you have to have a balanced game, you have to have no one side have an enormous advantage or whatever it may be. In the roleplay side, in the greater depth of the world side, all of those things can happen. A Chaos Sorcerer can have all 8 wins. It's as simple as that. They can. That's the nature of the fact that they're Chaos Sorcerer. They get access to all that, plus their own Chaos magic that sits on top of that. It's pretty freaking awful. And Dark magic, too, depending upon how it all runs out. So the limitations of the battle game are not limitations of Warhammer per se, but you'll find that whenever you're writing something for Warhammer that is for a licensed company or some equivalent, say, for example, Creative Assembly, what they're doing, or the fantasy roleplay game or anything similar, they are given the battle game in whatever state it may be, whether it was 8th edition for 4th edition fantasy roleplay, or whether it was 6th edition for earlier editions. And that is the model that they have to conform to, because that is what their product is, and they want to support their product because Games Workshop wants to support what they're selling just now. Totally makes sense. So you'll find that sometimes the lore will say that is the case, and then an edition later say something else is the case because either the battle game's changed or whoever's writing the material is told, actually, no, you've got the freedom to do what the world should be or what we've said the world is rather than match the game. So, yes, I agree completely. The magical nature of the Warhammer world allows for a great deal more than the battle game alone suggests.
Yeah, which is good, because I remember being younger, and I've kind of talked about this in the past, of that if you only are working off the battle game, you can get more of ideas like every single lore, which this can be true to some extent, but like every lore is like of the other lores is like a mix of lore, instead of the idea that no, it might be something unique, or that, oh, well, if my Nurgle caster can only have death and Nurgle, does that just mean that it's death magic with Dhar? Because that's the only things I have to work with. When logically, no, there would be life in there, and there'd probably even be hints and pieces of the other 6 ones as well. Yeah. I mean, yes to all of that. It's a complicated and much more interesting world than some descriptions of it would necessarily suggest. Here's a fun comment. I'm so sorry I can't read your name. I don't know how to read that particular language.
Neither do I.
Yeah, there's some mentions in the lore that theoretically Warpstone could be purified. Could you talk about that and talk about Warpstone's evolution from 1st edition?
Yeah, so Warpstone has gone through various forms. At one point, for example, Warpstone could be rendered inert with a rune. You get the correct rune on it, and it's no longer Warpstone as you understand it. You could pick it up and hold it. It would look like Warpstone, but it wouldn't necessarily do you in. And the Skaven still have that tech written into their backgrounds, and that's warp tokens all over the place, often created from bits of warpstone that they render inert using the horned rat symbol itself. And that renders it inert so they can trade it and do things with it and not turn into gibbering wrecks all the time. Plus, Skaven are to a degree not immune, but they are most certainly less.
They're certainly willing to risk it.
Yeah, 100%. They don't live that long anyway, so yeah, whatever. 10 years old is ancient for a Skaven.
Yeah, they definitely seem to have some innate resistance.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the same has happened with some runesmiths who have found methods of rendering warpstone inert. In particular, again, Alaric the Mad, the Nemesis Crown, that is its foundation point.
Yeah, there's also a dwarf character in the War of Vengeance series that figures that out before he gets assassinated.
Yeah, indeed. There are ways to render it inert, but these are strongly resisted almost every turn by whenever a new developer comes in or a new person handling the license, whatever. The second someone says, could we make warpstone okay and safe under certain conditions? Every time they say, no, that can never happen. And you get another round of it never happens. And then somebody's saying, but here's an instance, then it can never happen. So you'll find that there's blips in the background in a variety of places where it has happened in the past. And I think that makes it for a more interesting situation, particularly given that if it is, say, for example, just a scraped mark, do that slightly wrong and the whole thing's going to go just utterly wrong. And that's fun. You can also refine warpstone. It's what the Skaven do. So they effectively grind it down into a safer warp dust situation where it's no longer got the same efficacy that it did, but it can be ingested by the seers and indeed the engineers to significantly increase their capabilities with magic as their systems flood through with all of the winds of magic that would have been held within that original piece of warpstone. Warpstone is also, for the Skaven, it's got geriatric qualities. They've found methods of ways of keeping themselves going for far longer than they should have done using warpstone, which is by its very nature destructive and corrupting. It's an incredible procedure. However they've managed to do it, almost certainly is bad for them. But Skaven,
Council 13 is very old.
Yeah, it's ancient.
They don't look it. They don't look it at all.
No, they're like Skeksis going along, just carrying on from Dark Crystal. But that all aside, the general answer is no, you can't. It just can't. Warpstone is always dangerous. But the answer that you put on top of that is until this happens, this individual circumstance, this one person who found a way. But they almost always bury it at a later date.
Yeah, and just like people in chat are saying, we've cycled back around where Cathay has found supposedly safe ways to use warpstone. Yeah. They have a terracotta sentinel that is either built out of or fueled by warpstone because Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, is obsessed with it. Now, granted, there's also a lot of hints that it might be affecting him. He thinks it can't affect him because he's a dragon and he's a little arrogant, but he also has the Great Maw whispering in his mind now, where he's which I would kill for Zhao Ming to get explored in like a roleplay sense, because like his setup with the Great Maw is really interesting because like he talks to himself. If y'all are bored, go play a Zhao Ming campaign, and on the campaign map there will be times where he starts talking to himself and you can hear him discussing with the Great Maw. And like the other dragon kids are like, what's going on? He's kind of over there. Yeah.
Don't do that.
But he has also successfully invented a lot of really cool technologies using warpstone and found ways to make it safe enough for humans to use without mutating, which is very impressive.
I mean, warpstone's at the heart of most necromancy. Warpstone's almost certainly at the heart of many of the things that the Dark Elves have done. Warpstone is just pure magic. It's just dark magic in solid form. It's obviously horrible, corrupting, all these other things as well. But it is ultimately just a chunk of magic. And that, for those who know what they're doing, is an extremely powerful potential. It's like uranium, because in many respects, that's what it was. It was the 1980s version of uranium, because that's when it was created, the great nuclear horror that lay out there. And it mutates you.
Even non-magical people, like alchemists, even alchemists that cannot use magic, really like warpstone, because they if they're careful, they can use it without getting messed up. They just have to be very, very careful about it.
Totally, but that anything can be handled if handled correctly.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, there's a regiment of renown of Celestial Dragon Guard that have warpstone armor and weapons that's been effectively certified. And it's a very effective form of armor and weapon. Yes to the comment, shouldn't all warpstone weapons be magical? Yes, they should.
Yes.
I don't
yes,
know
they
why,
absolutely should.
I don't
And
know
whenever
why
they
Total
didn't
War
do
has
it,
that
particularly
weird
with the
issue.
Skaven, it was an issue that was constantly piped back to the studio during Warhammer 4th all the way through to 8th, really.
Yeah,
The number of weapons that they had that should be magical, Jezzails, for example, that were using warpstone bullets, warpstone inside their poison wind globes, but they forgot. Yeah, everything should be magical.
Yeah, you can see it like different editions. Most of them, if they're smart, they literally just have like a warpstone weapon modifier, and if you go to the part of the rules that's like this is magical attacks. But there are weapons they forget to apply it to. Total War has done that as well, where there's like 1 or 2 weapons that should have it but don't. Granted, that was due to an issue with the balance in game 2 because we had magic resistance, not spell resistance. But they're working on it, they're fixing it. So just going through some more Discord questions real quick. Snatter, when the vortex was undone, how did that affect spellcasters? Imagine if like you're used to working with like you're going out to grill, right? And you're like, I'm gonna turn on my grill just a little bit, but instead of a little bit, you activate a thermonuclear reactor. That's basically what happened, which is why a lot of them died. A lot of them died.
And for some creatures out there, they'd have preferred it. Yeah, I'm thinking your Malekiths of the world.
Yeah, a lot of it's like a lot of people got really big power boosts, and of course there were those who directly caused it. Nagash, he literally ripped the wind of death out because he's like, I'm just gonna hoard all this shit to myself. Which, if he had succeeded, if he had succeeded, would have made him a god. Like, there's no other way to put it. And he's almost pulled that off multiple times, which is why a lot of gods get really nervous around Nagash, because he's just crazy.
Material god.
Okay, we've already answered that one with the other senses. Oh, here's a fun one from Infiltrator of Troy. When I cast Dwellers Below, are the creatures that come out to attack my enemies, have they always been there, or did my spell create them?
Your spell created them.
There you go.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, there's a bunch of, because I call this a light spell, and light is not known for its summoning. In fact, it's known for the exact opposite. It's not until you pervert light with Dhar that it then becomes demonology, and it's used to create and summon effectively creatures and bind them, and it's similar. Light is very much the opposite of that. It's based in the whole cracking open the world and pulling
life, not life.
Is it life?
Yeah, it's a Ghyran spell.
I'm getting confused between my spell. I'm thinking the Hands of Kokora, aren't I?
Yeah. Dwellers Below is the is the one where if you failed the strength check, you got dragged.
You got dragged down. Yeah, dragged down. Getting my spells mixed up. Deeply disappointing with myself. Life. Life is a completely different kettle of fish. Life is often about drawing forth the life that already exists down there, vivifying things that may have been quiet. In that particular case, it's much more likely to be something that might not necessarily have been that down below, but most certainly has been summoned up and brought down. So with life, a completely different kettle of fish to the Hands of Kokora for light.
Yeah, and we'll say that the Warhammer world draws very heavily from Tolkien's inspiration in that, like, the depths of the Warhammer world are fucking scary. And there are things down there you could never imagine that lurk down there, and some of them have been there before the old ones. Some of them came after. There are even places where Dhar has gathered, because if magic gets stagnant, it turns into Dhar. If it can't flow, it eventually will coalesce into Dhar. So there are places where demons exist deep below the earth. Inevitably someone will ask, does that mean there's a Moria? There is absolutely a Moria. There has been a time where dwarves have dug too deep and accidentally found a bloodthirster. That has almost assuredly happened at least once.
I'm going to say more than once, because, it's the Warhammer world. You've got to do it at least 10 times before anyone really cares. I'm with a giant hat.
Sun Kyle asks, could you explain when using Witch Sight, what would it look to watch a wizard's duel? What would it look like as far as them casting, miscasting, and dispelling or counterspelling?
All right, so each time that they're casting a spell, they're first drawing in their individual wind or winds, depending on the nature of the spellcaster in question. Say, for example, they were a bright wizard. They would be pulling in, channeling and reforming the red wind of magic, which is relatively diffuse, gathers around flames. They'd pull that towards them. You would see that. You'd see them channeling it into a new shape. You'd see the words changing that magic into a literal material thing as it moves from your etheric sense to your physical sense. That would then be fired or chucked or whatever equivalent according to the spell at hand. Now, if you've got two magics slamming into each other, the inevitability of that is that all the magics that's involved with that will either collapse or hit against each other and the spells maintain, or alternatively, one pushes through onto the other side. If it collapses, the individual wins, just burst off each other, possibly causing a small amount of Dhar, because Dhar happens whenever you get pressure with the winds pushing against each other. So wizard duels, by their very nature, can potentially cause Dhar. It's one of the reasons why in the Bright College, where the Hall of Duels is, where wizards do most of their dueling to become the next supreme patriarch or matriarch, that's lined with obsidian. It's the Obsidian Hall to ensure that pretty much all the spells are not fatal, don't do that much damage, and also don't create Dhar, because obsidian is anti-magical by its very nature. Indeed, if you hold on the back wall, you're pretty much immune to magic because you're on the back wall. So it's a quick place to retreat to should everything go wrong. Anyway, that's obsidian. So if you're got your spell collapsing, it will collapse into the wind that it was created by. Different winds all look different, as we covered earlier on in the stream. If your one piles through, it will destroy the other spell, causing it to fritter away. Gold will land heavily on the ground and glitter away. Something like amethyst will just fall like dust and sand off towards the sides and gather. Ulgu will drift away like shadowy wisps of mist as whatever spell passes through it. Effectively, whatever the individual wind looks like gets pulled up towards the wizard and then turned into a spell. We all know what the spells look like because they're relatively well described. The spell goes out, and if they hit each other, one magic will either win over the other magic, or alternatively, they both collapse on each other.
And would it be fair to say that it's probably fairly dangerous to be caught in those like pieces of magic that are flying off?
Yeah, it's one of my regrets actually not doing the what now become the Winds of Magic book, because I had a variety of rules set up for how Dhar was created by Wizards Duels and by just spellcasters in general. How Dhar was an outcome, not just curses and things going wrong, because Dhar is part and parcel with being a wizard, and ensuring you don't fuck up your spellcasting is an important part of making sure you don't taint the world around you. There's a reason people are afraid of wizards, and not being able to write those rules made me a sad, sad man, because I was really looking forward to doing it.
There's always the blog. There's always the blog.
There's always the blog. I'll pop it up there. I'm already working on bits because I keep on getting bugged by Elric, by Dan, who's asking for new magic rules because he's been asking. He deserves them. So I'll pop them up soon. There's one of my favorite pieces of artwork, I think, from the 8th edition Lizardman book, is a magic duel between a Slaanesh and a Lord of Change. And it's literally the Lord of Change is like belching out this giant stream of fire, and the Slaanesh just holding up a hand, and the fire is reflecting all over the place. And it's like, yeah, no, you would not want to be anywhere near that. Right. And remember that what you're seeing there is only the material component. The immaterial component, what they're doing, these are almost miniature gods battling out in the battlefield. For those there that have the witch sight and can see the winds of magic, the onrushing swell of the enormous quantities of magic both of these exceedingly powerful entities are bringing to bear would be bluntly blinding. Because there'd be so much of it there. It would be the sort of thing that if you were your average wizard from the Empire, they'd come in and go, oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. Nope. I'm noping out of here. While everyone else just sees some fire and a bit of a shieldy thing going up. And they're like, okay, yeah, that sounds about it. The wizard's like, fuck it.
I think my favorite, accurate representation of a Slaanesh in the lore is in the Tyrion and Teclis series. Tyrion and Teclis go to Lustria for a little bit, and they're nowhere near a Slaanesh. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away from a Slaanesh. And Teclis senses one. He senses a sleeping Slaanesh, and I think it's implied to be like a 4th or a 5th generation, so not even one of the biggest ones, but he senses it sleeping, and he's like, we need to get the fuck out of here. Like, because Tyrion's like, can't you use a big spell to make this situation easier? And Teclis says, I am not waking that thing up. We are leaving.
Yeah, totally.
Which, like, yeah, they're scary.
Yeah.
So moving on to another question. Given there was magic in the old world before Teclis stuck his 8-color Orin, what did it look like, and how would they have reacted to some elf coming over and telling them everything they were doing was wrong?
okay, this has been covered in multiple places. I've written about this one myself, but it would have looked exactly the same. Let's start off with the obvious thing. The winds of magic were the same before as they were afterwards. Individuals and their own paradigms, their own belief systems would have tainted how they perceived the winds individually, but that wouldn't change how they would appear. So, first things first, the winds didn't change by Teclis arriving. I know that's obvious, but it's worth making it nice and clear. Now, imagine yourself somewhere in the region of 400 or 500 human wizards who have been gathered by 3 high elf mages and taught. Now, I'm just making a number up here. The numbers have never really been said, but there's a lot of them. Many of whom are going to fail.
On the march,
many of whom are going to be much more powerful than anyone expects. Volans, for example, roundly believed that he could probably channel all 8 winds when he arrived. And they were like, shit, that means we have to teach them the light wind because he can channel it. We can't get out of this shit.
And Patriarch of the Light College. He was a big deal.
And he became the Patriarch of the Light College because the Light College is by far the most difficult to win to channel. And there he is, right in there at the beginning. Fallens. He's the man. So there they are, and they're attempting to tell all of these individual elementalists, hedge witches, pokey druids, various types of people that all of their beliefs are completely wrong, and the magics that they're casting are dangerous. And here is an alternative, and they teach them what is the elemental lores of the elves. Now, this is basically their apprenticeship. An elf apprentice gets taught the 8 lores of magic, and they get taught just a single one of them. They basically become elven apprentices just for their life. The most powerful human wizard is the equivalent of an elven apprentice. That's basically what they're teaching them and consolidating, because they think that's the only way they can see that they're safe, because all of the ones around them are dropping Dhar like they have no idea. Now, not all of them are, because some of them are practicing traditions that are relatively safe, but most of them aren't. These are just dodgy hedge witches. They're the very worst witches that they have to offer. They are then slowly siphoned to whichever wind that they have strongest. That's the 8 winds that they're split between. Only a few that can be properly trustworthy are given the grey. Almost no one can do the light. Loads of them can do jade because it's a relatively easy wind. A few can do amethyst. And they're all segregated out, and they're very carefully taught that everything they know is wrong. Now, the question is loosely, how do they take that? Almost all of them badly.
Yeah.
but they have a very strong reason to definitely do it. And that's that for the first time in their lives, they're legal.
Yeah.
For the first time in their life, the cult of Sigmar, who have been hounding them, no longer can, because they're in a position where they've been given effectively dispensation to use magic for the first time and to learn the good shit. Not the shitty little spells that they've been working on, but proper battle magic spells for some of them who are capable. Proper, I can blow up a regiment type of magic. Because in the end, as we all know, not only were they only taught how to be elven apprentices, they were only really ever taught how to do war magic. Because they're weapons. Weapons of the Empire. But nevertheless, it's very, very, very tempting for them to stick with it and do what they're told, because they're going to be in a position where they can now legally exist without being hunted down. So many of them stick, many of them will run away, many of them will disappear, so they'll be hunted down. But cut the long story short, as they accept this new paradigm and this new way of thinking, they will all slowly but surely, over the course of time, become the wizards we know and love today. And they will learn to view the winds in the same way, because it's what they're taught. They'll be shown where they're making mistakes. They'll be shown how they're doing things wrong. They'll be shown that what they're doing is creating Dhar. So all of that amounts to... It used to be not wizards that were one way, and they turned into wizards that were or got killed.
Yep. All right. We're going to enter some rapid fire mode, so prepare yourself.
Right.
Just try and get through a lot of these questions. Sure. Why is Ethel Lauren so weird? Because there's a lot of magic.
Spirits.
Yeah. Spirits, a lot of magic. And
magic.
Also, yeah. According to 8th edition, the old ones were also kind of involved, which everything they touched got odd. Let's see. Here's a... Okay. One sentence per wind, Andy.
Okay.
How do new wizards, like apprentices, learn each of the different winds?
Okay, right. So, yeah. Each of them are massively different. Don't think that the Imperial Colleges of Magic have got a fixed curriculum that all 8 colleges follow. They all have completely different curriculums with a completely different setup, and each of them requires a little bit of time to go into, so I won't. But let's just say that they all do it completely differently. Some of them take a really long time. Some of them do it in a relatively short period of time.
There you go. Let's see. We already answered that. Can high magic be used to raise the dead? You can revive people with it. Yes, they would not be like traditional. They wouldn't be zombies. They'd probably be much cleaner and prettier.
Yeah, what you got to remember with the high magic is it's all other magic plus, and light magic can contact the divine realms, and the divine realms are filled with people who are dead, who are still working on a good side. Now, you might not agree with that depending on which version of the background you go with, but everything from Aerith Kael and what she's doing with the elves to most of the gods having divine servants in one fashion or another, they can be brought back using mostly light magic, which requires a +1 to do the big shit, high magic.
Let's see. So it seems godhood is tied to the winds of magic. Yeah, that's a pretty fair statement. What about the dwarf ancestor gods?
Yep. In the same fashion, it's a toughie. This is one of the ones where if you try to supply an answer, all you're really doing is contradicting something else. Because dwarves are always a little bit special in how they deal with this. The ancestor gods, I think it'd be fair to say that it's not so much magic, and it's just that fuckers don't go away.
Yeah, and I would say there is something inherently often magical about them. I do not think it's a coincidence that when the vortex was created and a lot of magic left the world, so did the ancestor gods.
I agree.
Yeah, they functionally went into hibernation to basically wait for the day that magic would return.
Yeah, the one thing you've got to really get about dwarves is that for all they are utterly magically dead, for want of a better description, they gather magic quite well.
Yeah,
they gather quite a lot of gold to them. They gather quite a lot of Hysh. They gather a lot of gold because they're very methodical people, and it comes around them. They literally can't help it. There's a lot of magic about them. Just because they themselves can't do anything with it using normal processes doesn't mean that there isn't a lot there. They are, however, it's fair to say, one of the least chaos affected species, though. In that you don't get loads of fucking dwarf mutants all over the place.
Yep, and that's why, for those wondering, because I've seen some questions about it, that's why the Chaos Dwarves are so fucking horrific on like a physical and spiritual level. It really messed them up good.
Yep, 100%.
Oh gosh, there is a lot of text on this one. Okay, I'm going to break this down to magic seems to change all creatures. Yes. How were dragons changed by magic before the old ones? Because magic still existed. The old ones didn't introduce the concept. And dragons are often drawn to magic. Many dragons are sympathetic to a wind of magic, and if they hang around it for too long, it literally changes them. That's why there are actually dragons denoted to each of the specific lores.
Yep, and
Yeah, could there be a dragon of the other minor lores, like a Nehekara dragon, an ice dragon, or a maw dragon? I would say if it's like a religious lore from a god, probably not. Ice magic, maybe, if it's its own separate lore.
It's all sunk. If it's all sunk inside Kislev somewhere, yeah, I could even see that actually happening. Get yourself a big ice dragon. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, and we do know there are ice dragons. They do exist. Though typically they're considered to be Azyr related, because they hang out in like ice storms and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is really possible to answer necessarily because it gets into some weird stuff. Is the Great Green one of the divine realms in the realm of chaos, or is it something else entirely?
Okay, yeah, you can answer that. The answer is depending upon how you view the realms of chaos, either yes or no. And by that I mean the Aether is infinite. The Aether is supposedly where the gods reside in some fashion or another. If you believe that the Aether is filled with things that aren't just chaos, then the answer is yes. That is where they are. Because there's nowhere else for them to be in the Warhammer world. And Mork and Gork absolutely do in some form exist. So that is where they would exist, in the Aether. It's infinite. It's got more than enough space. So yes, but... And I can make a few buts in that one.
Yeah. Does magic have anything to do with how End has so many gods in the non-chaotic beastmen? I would say that is very likely. have gods, you probably have to have magic because they kind of need that wibbly wobbliness to do things.
I mean, the gods come from a magical realm. They are magic. In one fashion or another, gods are magic. Even if you believe they're just all chaos gods putting on faces, if that is your preference, it's still at its core 100% magic.
How does Andy feel about the new Cathay lore on magic, where they have the 8 elemental winds that are understood as different concepts, but also similar? And how does he feel about the lores of yin and yang?
Love it.
There you go.
And keep that one simple. Absolutely love it. I think it's a necessary development. Our magic in the Warhammer world has been too focused on the Empire and how it viewed magic, and then putting how it viewed magic on everybody else afterwards. And I didn't like that. And you can see that right from the very first creation of the Winds of Magic at the very beginning.
What is the geomancy of the Slán in essence?
We sort of covered that. I mean, one way of viewing it would be a big, huge, massive magic battery.
Yeah. Yeah. And the geomancy of the Slán, like Andy kind of said, it's functionally them kind of using high magic. And then, like, depending on what they're doing exactly, it might be like Hysh if they're causing a lot of earthquakes and stuff. It might be life if they're like raising up a forest or a hill or something. It depends on what they're doing with it exactly. But just think big. They're big spells. Maybe a dumb idea, but I think, oh no, okay. That's not a dumb idea. Maybe we'll do that one day, which the suggestion is looking at the spells in Total War Warhammer and if they're like fun and accurate and stuff.
Sure, that would be fun.
2 questions. How do you imagine, oh no, okay, we already talked about that. Yeah, sorry.
I approve of that sort of question.
Millennium, thank you for the question. We already answered it. We already answered that one too. I think any lore that you see in any system could absolutely exist in the canon. Just because it's not explicitly talked about in the roleplay game or explicitly talked about in the tabletop game does not mean it doesn't exist.
100%. Indeed. The more that's added, probably the better. Think how big the real world is, and think how big think how many different people are doing crazy stuff all over the world. It's beyond counting. And the Warhammer world is in a similar place. Adding an extra lore or two is small stuff.
Okay, so fun question, RPG related for 4th edition from Half Crown talks about in the new, so in the new book and some of the old books, it talks about how when you pick a lore of magic, it often starts to affect your regular arcane spells.
Yes.
So he goes, could you give me an example just for fun of like if you were to cast a basic spell like Bridge or Dome when using something like Ghur or Shyish, if I wanted to make it not just a basic typical description?
Yeah, sure.
Look like?
Yeah. So first, let's clear up a slight misunderstanding there to make sure it's entirely clear. In Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4, there are no windless color arcane spells. Every single spell that's in that arcane list is attached to all 8 lists in a different way. So, for example, the bridge spell, there's 8 different bridge spells, each one of which is attached to one of those lores. So there's a purple bridge spell, a red bridge spell. Each one is different and cannot be learned from another one. And you can't learn a spell without knowing one of those 8 winds. That's it. There is no, I've got an arcane spell and I can do it. There is, however, witch lores that get access to those spells. And they, again, manifest them in different ways. So every single one of the spells in that arcane list should be described differently for every single one of the winds. So the example there was, what was it, a bridge?
Bridge or barrier.
For which wind?
Ghur or Ulgu.
Either's pretty easy. So there's an actual existing Ulgu spell, Shadow Bridge, which is a battle magic spell, admittedly, so a far bigger version of the basic bridge spell, but it just gives you a shadowy bridge that you can make your way across. It's an illusion style one with drifting smoke coming off of it. Equally on that, you could have it possibly be almost a gateway that moves through the Ankern, which is almost a shadowy realm that you can pass your way through. That's another way of doing it. Ghur is always easy. You just immediately go, what sort of animal can do it? It doesn't just need to be quite literally a bridge of, I don't know, a giant pile of slugs or whatever animal you prefer. It could be an animal swooping down and carrying all the people that are affected by the bridge across instead. All you need to do is look at the spell's effect, not its name. What does it actually do? And the question that's answered there is it moves you from A to B. So anything animal-based that moves you from A to B, including sprouting your own bloody wings, is a good way of resolving that.
Yep. Loopy, what's the most complicated spell? Go watch my top 5 spells ever cast video. It's super fun and goofy, and those spells are literally like borderline reality breakers. They're fun. Like the big final spell Lord Croak casts, it's bonkers. It literally took him like a month to like cast it, and he's talking the entire time. Like that's how complex some spells can get. Would Cygors be blinded by winds of magic? Oh, I'll put it this way. Would you be blinded if I throw a flashbang in your face? So now granted, it would have to be a very sudden storm of magic. You know, their eyesight, I think, could reasonably adjust to it because they only see the winds of magic. But yeah, no, that would probably be relatively unpleasant for them if it was very sudden.
It would.
How would Athel Loren look to the witch site, especially with its various denizens?
Absolutely redolent with the winds of magic, and don't think it's just going to be Ghyran and Ghur. It's going to have all of the winds in there, and particularly given that so many of the glades are so very different in how they manifest. The elves, in particular, are deeply emotional creatures that cycle through a depth of emotion that really does surprise other species, and they bring and summon winds of magic in great amounts. And when you add that a whole bunch of vengeful, spiteful, terrible spirits, all of whom have got ancient histories and old hatreds and loves and everything else in between, that is a place that is so redolent with magic that those with witch sight are going to be a little bit, whoa, man, this stuff is mighty weird. So yeah, a lot.
Yeah, and if you're ever jamming that, have a lot of fun with the way they see the various spirits, because like the way the spirits of Athel Loren present themselves is usually what's referred to as their war aspect. They can take almost any form they want, but if you could see their magic form, it'd probably be really weird looking.
Yeah.
Totes. Does magic break our world's basic rule of physics that matter can neither be created or destroyed, only converted? I would say
that's a fascinating one. That's a really fascinating one, because some wizards will say no.
Yeah.
And several wizards, particularly the more methodical ones, the Celestials, the Golds, they are constantly looking for ways to show how magic is actually completely constrained by the material realm. The mortal realms are massively stuck, and magic, arguably Tzeentch, arguably bringing in change, is at the heart of all that is wrong. And the biggest spells clearly do change the material realm in a way that possibly breaks the laws of physics. And that is what is potentially shattering the world and bringing around the great cycles where eventually the Everchosens themselves can come. There's a reason that the cult of Sigmar in general are deeply against magic.
Yeah, I would say yes, it can, and that's the problem. The winds of magic, they are literally just, it's energy. Magic is energy from a realm of infinite, and that is problematic. That's why
it's worth also adding that one of the issues that those wizardy woos have is that the winds wax and wane. Sometimes they have very little of it around, so they do have to draw in quite a lot sometimes to create their magical effects. So there is definitely cause and effect. But are they creating something? Now, the amount of energy that they build, they're converting into something else. There is a reason that some golds claim that there is absolutely no new energy created, and it does work within the physical realms of science. But there's equally reason that others claim that certainly isn't the case. Just take a look at something swelling up to a ridiculous size. Where does that all come from? And they would say it comes from the magical energies, which have been rewritten from being etheric energy, pure ether, by its transfer into the material realm.
Let's see. If each of us could choose one lore of magic that we could control, which would it be? We've asked Andy this before. I think you settled on Ghyran?
Yeah, probably, because it's nice and easy and less likely to fuck with me completely. Although there is a good alternative. You could say Chaos, because to do that you'd have to have mastered all other 8 winds.
I think that's a cheat answer, but yeah. I would also probably be in the life category, because I feel like there's a lot of good you could do with it with relatively little risk and bad. Whereas the other lore is like there are temptations there or downsides that are very serious, or they are much more efficient at unleashing horror than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, the mental health issues alone.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, actually, you can do a couple of good things with Aqshy, but you'd be far more
can
likely to
you?
blow up the neighborhood. Lore of Heavens is the coolest. I would not want to deal with the anxiety that the Lore of Heavens would give me, like trying to see the future and a bunch of other nonsense. No, sir. Okay. So, I think there's a couple of last tiny little things that I saw that I think would be really cool. What is this question? If the dwarves made a ring around the Chaos Gate with the anvils of doom, would that solve the problem?
Oh, absolutely. Problem solved. If only they thought about it.
Tell you what, let's get enough anvils of doom to surround the warp gates up in space. No problem.
Yeah.
What is Truthsayer magic? Albion, everybody's favorite.
Yeah. It's interesting because I had a discussion about this very briefly with Gav Thorpe, that is, because he and I were going to be writing an adventure to follow on from The Enemy Within. And at the core of that was going to be a variety, at least in the first part, of issues with the Truthsayers and let's say other people like Bellicor et al. And what the Truthsayers were was briefly highlighted in that. And the easiest way would be to say something along the lines of further remnant of druidic magics. That would be one way of viewing it. It would work. You could say that they are a holdout from a more ancient civilization and knowing certain things that come from that. Ultimately, Albion is an exceedingly important place in the Warhammer world, much more so than is immediately apparent. And much of our discussion centered around the fact that that wasn't a part of the end times, and we felt it was a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I don't know why they retconned the Albion Crisis out before the end times. It was very weird because it's such a core part of everything that leads up to the end times. Because how can Bellicor be
definitely with Bellicor?
Yeah, he's anyway.
I agree.
Albion Crisis was great. I'm glad Total War embraced it. Albion is really fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun there.
Okay. Let's see. And then I saw one that actually caught my attention for you. From this lovely person again. Does Andy miss illusion magic and elementalists from first edition Old Hammer lore? There were multiple attempts to write them back in second, but I'd like to hear his thoughts on it.
Right. So, illusionists, I was going to add back into second. They were going to be coming up in a book called Tome of Thieves. This was a book that I was going to be writing with Will Hindmarch, who is currently working for Critical Role, as I recall. Darrington Press, making some board games for him. And it was going to be a book about all of the various scoundrels and ne'er-do-wells that you would find across the old world. Included in that was going to be illusionists who were going to be using a mixture of Dhar and Grey to do what they were doing. They were going to be a witch lore, much like we had the witch lores for the ice witches, the hedge witches, the hag witches, et al. They were going to be added in. We were also going to be adding in a group called Pocket Men. And they were people that were ultimately based on the old produce something out of the hat, Pocket Men. But they'd be pulling basically stuff out their pockets from the aether, effectively. They were going to be using a mixture of Hysh and Dhar. The
miscast for that would be spectacular.
Utterly awesome.
And blows himself up.
And it's where you got like produce small animals, and they would be pulling out equipment for their friends so that they could do heists. And storing stuff and getting your bag of carry, and there's going to be all the thiefy type angles there. But their magic was not only deeply illegal because it's not a legal form of magic in the Empire or anywhere else, but it was also going to be pretty dangerous because of the Dhar side effects that came along with it. So do I miss those? Yes. Were we going to introduce them then? Yes, we were. And elementalists were a little bit tougher because, as I mentioned way earlier in the stream, there was always the issue with earth elementals and exactly where they sit inside the existing elemental 8 lores of magic. Now, obviously, we've got a really good answer now with Azyr and why it works for Azyr, and I really like it. And I would almost certainly use that if I were going to be doing that today. The rest of them are arguably much easier. And sadly, though, Azyr works really well for the air elemental as well. Oh, God damn it! But you could work that quite nicely to Ulgu if you wish.
Hysh.
It's diffuse and it's all over the place. There's ways to do it.
There are options. There are options.
But loosely, all of those, if second edition had continued, would have almost certainly been added in other ones. I was already commissioned for an elf book, an encyclopedia book, a thief book, and one other book I actually forget off the top of my head.
Man,
and
we're in
all
the worst
of
timeline. We didn't get
yeah,
those.
yeah, we did not get those because Games Workshop pulled the plug on second edition, and they sold it as a license over to FFG, which meant that that's Fantasy Flight Games, which meant that all of the planned books got changed and they made a third edition of the game instead. So yeah, I missed them, and yes, I'd bring them back.
Yeah, that being said, I do think there's a lot of strength for them coming back. Like I said, my Araby proposal video is going to be coming out this week, so y'all should check that out. I think Elementalists is what they would call their wizards. And they would probably have cool summoning and a bunch of other cool stuff.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Give me them lesser elementals, because they have already 3 lesser elemental types, being the Djinns, the Ifrits, and the I can't remember what the third one's called.
Just look at the Arabian ship from Dreadfleet.
Yeah, exactly. It literally has 3 incarnate elementals on it.
Yeah, totally.
But why aren't Anvil of Dooms made anymore? They forgot. The dwarves lost the knowledge of how to do it. Also, I would highly suggest there's not enough magic in the world anymore.
I mean, if they had, then they'd have just run around the Chaos Gates and they'd have shut.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll put it this way. Y'all know how insane a Storm of Magic is. And if you don't, like, a Storm of Magic is a borderline cataclysmic event if it's not dealt with. Alric the Mad used a Storm of Magic to make the 12 rune fangs. That's it. Like, granted, the rune fangs are awesome. They're really powerful. Also, go watch Lawhammer. There's some really cool lore threads happening with rune fangs right now.
You should do that.
Yeah, but yeah, no. Forging an Anvil of Doom would be virtually impossible. Now, it would
agreed.
You'd have to.
It's the sort of thing that if you're doing yourself some form of end times campaign or something, you could turn that into the campaign. The world is going crazy. Massive storm of magic is coming out. There's potentially a way to resolve it. Maybe an Anvil of Doom is your answer. But really, it would require some sort of epic plot.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised if Anvil of Doom use high magic. I actually say they're almost more dangerous than that. In that high magic kind of has a stability that Anvil of Dooms don't. Anvil of Dooms can explode. It happens, and when they explode, it is awful. Which is why, like, Thoric Ironbrow is insanely intelligent. The fact that he's able to literally take out a rune that is drawing magic to it, and he sets it on a forge and goes boom and causes a spell to happen is nuts. Like, the power he's wielding and how fucking dangerous that is unspeakable. But yeah.
The Geraldo, I'd just like to say, watch my freaking campaign, because that's what you're gonna get.
Yeah. Yes. So we're pretty much at the end. So thank you all so much for watching. I do want to take a moment to say, please go watch Lawhammer. He's on this site.
Yes, do that.
Yes. I will not stop shutting up about it. I'm literally going to talk about it endlessly because I love it a lot, and I think y'all will love it a lot. That's the reason. I'm not saying it because, like, I'm trying to get, Andy's okay. I'm not saying like he's living on the streets and
he's all right.
but if you enjoy these kinds of streams, you're going to love Lawhammer. That's why I bring it up. So please go check that out. Also, Rookery Publications. They do a lot of really fantastic streams. They just did one with Sage this past Saturday, which was fantastic, talking a lot about how to pull other cultures into your homebrews and also just homebrewing in general. Really enjoyed that. The week before, they did a whole stream about with can't remember his name.
I have no memory of that. Oh, it's Adrian Tchaikovsky, wasn't it?
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Liar. Yeah, you did. But they did a stream that was really big on how to create not just humans in another skin suit, but something genuinely different. How to create non-human species, and it's fantastic. I actually was able to submit a question to get him ranting on the lizardmen for a bit, and it was awesome. He had a lot of really cool things to say about them. Yes, please do check those out. And also, if you're here, you know my shit, so I'm not going to plug my shit.
But you should watch more of his shit.
Yes, please do. I need the money.
Definitely should.
And the last question, which a billion people submitted, is, Andy, have you had time to check out any of the You on Bow stuff, and what do you think about it so far?
Oh, what an idiot I was. So, yeah. I opened it up, I started reading it going, yes, went off and did something else. My ADHD brain came in, and then I started writing spells, which is appropriate for this stream, went off to do some talents, forgot about the document. Half an hour before I was coming on this stream, sat down, went on to, I'm not going to call it what it is, and went on to Twitter, and I was like, oh, holy shit, that thing. Oh, Andy Hall said, shit. Oh, balls, I've not read that. Oh, I'm so rubbish. Immediately went to open it up and then got caught up with doing this. So sadly, I do not have any opinions that I should have.
We'll get back to you on that one.
So I will have opinions later. I was just an idiot.
We'll get back to you on. I loved it. I've already got an analysis video up on it, and we also did a live stream where we just rambled about it for like 4 hours.
What a fool.
But anywho, yes, and hopefully we'll have so we're gonna do something a little different this week because I saw this suggested and it seemed like Andy liked the idea based on the emotes he attached to it. But instead of me and Andy just picking a subject and we're like boom there, me and Andy are going to figure out like a selection of topics, like maybe 3 to 5, and we're gonna let the community vote on what y'all want us to talk about. That way we're not forced to pick something that we don't want to talk about, but we also are allowing community interaction, so it should be a lot of fun. For this week, it'll be done on my YouTube channel to make things easy, but starting next week, I'm going to put it other places. So y'all have to check out our other channels. So like you might have to go to the Lawhammer channel and be a subscriber to vote on it there.
That's straight. That's a fine idea.
Yeah.
Subscribe. Yeah. Subscribe.
If you want to be able to have influence on what we're going to discuss, you're going to need to, go subscribe over there. Please do.
Yes,
it's criminal how much and granted it's because YouTube is a bitch and the way it handles things like roleplay channels is not nice. The algorithm is not nice to that, so help out. But in any event, we are over time, so thank you all for watching. It was awesome to see how many people showed up. Like holy shit, a lot of people were here.
You are awesome and we love you all.
So I don't think there's anything else.
I have nothing on to say other than looking forward to seeing what we're going to be discussing next week. That's going to be fun.
And is Lawhammer on this Friday?
Certainly is. This Friday, we are working our way through the second book of The Enemy Within, and we're hearing off in quite some different directions already. However, don't worry about that. If you've not watched any of it, just go straight back to episode 1. You've got 25 awesome episodes worth of enormously content to come, including some characters that you really, really won't expect.
I would like to officially announce while I'm sitting here thinking about it on YouTube and Twitch, because I'm going to use this system for it. I am going to start having streams where I'm just going to be talking about Lawhammer and my thoughts on it and like the lore of it and whether I think they're doing a good or terrible job.
Shit job. It's terrible.
So please show up to those. And like, we're basically just going to probably start this week of like episode 1. And I'm going to give you all a few days to watch it leading up to that episode. That way we can kind of do play-by-plays and have a lot of fun with it. And it gives everyone an excuse to watch it and also to not be overwhelmed by it, because we're just going to take it a piece at a time and also explore it, because some of it can be kind of challenging or interesting, and we'll have fun. And maybe one of these days we'll get to have the various crew members over and Andy himself to talk about the questions that y'all come up with. It could be a lot of fun. And the last thing is, Andy, what time is the next episode of Lawhammer on Friday?
So next episode is at 7 o'clock UK time on
that'll be 1 p.m.
Friday, and it's on Twitch at Lawhammering.
Yep. And then what is going to be happening Saturday for Workery? Do you know yet?
I do, but before we do that, also the next episode that was from last Friday will be going up on Monday. That's tomorrow. So if you want to watch our most recent episode, it'll be up tomorrow at hopefully 7 o'clock, assuming that Erin has done all the production things behind the scene. I'll find out when I go over. I have no idea if it's ready or not. It's going to be exciting.
Not even on camera.
And this Saturday is, as I recall, this Saturday is our last episode for we're in season 5 for season 5 of Inside the Rookery, and we have ourselves on some discussion about architectural horror and how to use buildings to really build up the horror of a situation. And they've written tons of role-playing games that indeed do that themselves. So that's going to be super exciting. I'm also, right after that, going to be doing a tutorial. This one's for patrons, but I will mention it just so you know if you fancy. It's going to be teaching people how to write up fast, effective locations for their own role-playing games. I basically created a template that's been used in a variety of different productions, including the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay starter set, to create locations and the NPCs that are in them super fast. So I'm going to be doing a tutorial for how to do all that. And then after that, I'll be doing a bunch of mapping tutorials for patrons as well.
Awesome. Now, is that the Lawhammer patron or the Rookery?
That's inside the Rookery patron, which is a completely separate thing because that's Rookery Publications. The Lawhammer patron is for the Warhammer streams, what we do every single week.
So there you go. Awesome. So yes, thank you all for watching. Hope you all have a lovely day. We're out. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.